We are live. So I'll say indeed, and greetings unto you, beloved and holy friend. Thank you for joining me again. We have a new friend joining us as well. Would you like to introduce yourself, Ruben?
Yeah, obviously my name is Ruben. You might have seen me in some of the comments before. I'm trying to get into English mode because I'm not naturally English, although I don't think I'm terrible. Uh, so I'll try to think in English, then I should be fine. You know, if I think in Afrikaans and I try to talk in English, then it's not gonna work.
You're gonna get your
But yeah,
wires crossed.
yeah. But I'm a youth pastor in Groblersdal. Um,
Weirdly
so
enough, sorry for interrupting you.
yeah,
That's actually what I save the title as Melkmore talks to Ruben.
yeah. But yeah, I'm a youth pastor, but I'm definitely no stranger to psychedelics um, and all of that. So um, I think the last thing I want to say before we start today, I really want to say I think it's important to. I know you always like to set an intention when you roll your joint or
Mm.
whatever, but I think it's important to say beforehand that the goal of the conversation should not be like your ego against my ego.
Mm.
You know, I mean, obviously we have different views, different worldviews. I think a lot more similar than people might think, but when it's your ego versus my ego, opinion versus opinion,
It's gonna be,
it's
yeah.
useless.
I weirdly enough, I'm so happy that you're touching on that exactly because as I know you were coming through today, I wrote this in my journal for today, saying Ruben will come and see me slash join me on stream today. He is probably going to have views he would like to share. I will listen and be mindful of my reactions to what I hear. There will probably be things I disagree with, but I will not let myself get emotional or angry. My purpose is to share love, and this I will.
Amazing.
Right?
That's
And
perfect.
I'm so happy that
That's
you
perfect.
shared that as well, dude, because it really is that way, man. Like
Yeah.
none of us knows, right? Not really.
Yeah. We don't. We don't.
We don't actually
We
know,
don't.
and I feel it's very important for us to kind of like come to this. What do we agree on first,
Yes.
and then we can kind of from that point on kind of touch on the other things.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, it spirals out of control of things that we might do in our personal lives that we
Yes.
don't agree on.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you're obviously a youth pastor, so you believe in being saved,
Yes.
right?
Absolutely.
So maybe starting this off, what is the topic you would like to address?
Okay. So I think first of all, before I even say what is the topic I would like to address, first of all, I want to say for me personally, the goal I have, obviously, I said I don't want it to be ego against ego and so on.
Mm.
But personally, the goal I have is really to join you in exploring the unknown.
Okay,
You know,
I like that.
because that's honestly when you have true honest conversations, not egotistical conversations. When you really uh, when you have the intention of reaching the highest possible truth in a conversation,
Yeah,
that miracles happen from conversations
absolutely.
like that.
Like this
Yeah.
insight that arises.
Yeah,
Mm.
and it's conversations like that where it feels like time passes by so quickly.
Exactly.
It can be 4 hours, and then I realize, okay, me and this guy, we spoke through the entire night. Things like that happened before,
Exactly.
like with one of my friends. So for me personally, that's what I would like to set as the intention for this conversation.
Exploring the unknown.
Exploring the unknown.
It's interesting that you talk about this time dilation effect as well. Like most of the people, I have a bunch of Christian friends, obviously,
Yeah.
right? And like one of my friends, Armand, for example, he also tunes in occasionally. I met him in high school,
Hmm.
and the very first conversation we had, even during high school, I had divergent belief systems, and he's
Mm.
also a Christian. And it was one of those days where 9 a.m. we started having a conversation, and 6 p.m. when the bell rang for our dinner, we only realized how long of a
How late it
conversation we've
is.
been
Yeah.
having. And it really is that almost like melting away of, as you mentioned,
Yes.
ego. We're not trying to be right, we're trying to explore. We're
Absolutely.
trying to
Yeah.
explore, right? And then wherever this conversation may take us, we'll see. Let's see if we have some friends. Andre Engelbrach, Kan nie van Engelberg.
Ek ken vir Andre.
Okay.
He's actually my roommate. So yeah, I live in an apartment and he lives in the apartment with me.
Did you
Andre?
tell him you were gonna be here?
Yeah.
Okay,
he
that
knows I'm
makes it a
gonna
little.
be
I
here.
was about to
Yeah,
say, like, what are the odds?
he knows a bit about your streams and so on. He's watched here and there. But yeah, he said he's gonna tune in.
It's
So
nice having you here too, man. I see Shan and Sam and Jovan is here too, sending you love. Hey, Melton, Ruben, thank you again, Andre, for the love. My tea was crazy rabbit energizer bunny tea. I thought you would laugh. I'm appreciated. So not Shannon kind of resonates with the animal spirit that is the rabbit. Let's actually
the rabbit.
talking about the
Okay.
unknown, right? So this is a conversation I've been trying to have with my dad when it comes to God or the
Okay.
universe, if you want to, so, call it that. How that energy communicates with us through different mediums, right?
Okay.
One of the mediums I believe is like animals. So
Okay.
if I'm in a certain state of mind, like for instance during my yoga today, I was really feeling it, and then I saw a little butterfly, right,
Okay.
fly through my field of
Okay.
vision, and in my worldview, that is God communicating to me,
Okay.
right? Like out of the infinite possibilities of where things could have been, there was now a butterfly in my field of vision.
Okay.
So it's the same for like the rabbits. We have like some wild rabbits coming up on the stream, sometimes little deers, sometimes bats, sometimes owls, and then like for instance, hey Google, what is the spirit meaning of the butterfly? And then it'll give you like some sort of basic information where it goes different Native American tribes interpret butterflies in their own way, but generally they're thought to represent change, transformation, comfort,
Yeah,
hope, and positivity.
metamorphosis and so on. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. It
While
makes
some
sense.
believe ancestors connected through butterflies, others took the presence of these creatures as joyous and hopeful signs. That is one, and then the other one is numbers, right?
Numbers. Yeah.
Synchronistic numbers,
Yeah.
where you feel this urge to check the time, and then you
Yeah.
check the time, and it's like 44
Yeah.
or 11 or.
It's like for me, for instance, and I'm gonna share this with you. It's actually quite hilarious. I was actually before I came to faith. I wasn't really a Christian growing up, and I was actually a very big psychonaut. So I took a lot of mushrooms quite regularly, and smoked a lot of weed multiple times every day. And since I got out of that and came to faith, I've always been seeing 420.
Okay.
No matter what I do,
Yeah.
I'm always seeing 420.
And then how do you take
know?
it when you see it?
Okay, so yeah, this is probably going to be amusing to you, but in a way, when I try to like try, I think you can take the number 420 and I can go like, no, it's this Bible verse,
For
it's
example, yeah.
I can do something like that or whatever. But I realized there's so many different types of meanings that
Assign
I
to
can
it.
try and assign to it. So I'm gonna be honest with you. It's like I don't really know, but at the same time, the when I looked at what the meaning of that can potentially be, at some point I have gotten to kind of this realization through, I can't remember even where I was reading it and so on and so on, and I came to kind of this realization where it's something like your guardian angel or something is watching over you. But what's going to be amusing to you is, and that's something where we probably will differ, but what's going to be amusing to you is like in my conversion, some of the entities I have been making contact with during my psychedelic trips, during meditation, during all of that, some of the entities I've been making contact with. One of the things that brought me to a place where I also realized, okay, you know what, maybe all of the entities aren't really what I thought they were, and distrust started coming in.
They can present themselves as light, but still have
Yes.
nefarious.
So in a way, it's like when I see that, it's almost like and I'm not saying this is right,
Okay.
but I'm almost seeing it like they reminding me that they're watching me. They're watching me. So
Yeah.
so now I'm a good Christian or whatever, but we're watching you. You
Yeah.
know? It's almost something like that. So always when I see it, it's kind of amusing to me. I don't make too much
Yeah,
of
yeah.
it because I'm not saying it's definitely that, you know
No, I
But
really appreciate the way you shared, right? Because I feel it means like, and I kind of agree with you where I don't know what it means,
yeah,
right? Other than it's like a reminder.
yeah,
So I
yeah,
feel like
yeah.
I'm trying to draw like
Yes,
similarities
yes,
between the things we feel when we see these numbers, like a
yeah,
reminder of like, oh yeah, you're still seen,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And I call it synchronicity because in my mind it means that I'm living in sync,
yeah.
right? So the decisions I'm making throughout my day and then what they're leading me to do, check my phone or whatever, check the time, and then I see these synchronistic numbers. Instead of going out of my way, at least these days, to go and like,
Mm,
oh, what does this number mean right now?
mm.
I usually just take it as like, okay, I'm, I take it almost, how can I, like almost like as a call to awareness. I feel
Yes,
that's the
yes,
best way to see it.
yes.
As
Okay.
like, what am I doing right now? And what is this message, even if it's just two numbers,
Yeah,
supposed to mean in this
yeah.
moment to me? For instance, last night I wanted an ice cream, right? So basic. And the flour I was making was exactly 22.2 megabytes, right?
Okay.
20 megabytes. And I was like, triple two, right? Synchronicity.
Yeah.
And then I got up, I kind of like went against my own better judgment and getting an ice cream. I get the ice cream and then I check my phone for the time and it's 22 minutes. It's like 20 minutes past 10. So 22:20,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And I'm like,
Mm.
so
Yeah.
even though that was perfectly synchronous, I take that as that synchronicity telling me I'm doing the wrong thing
Yes,
in that
but
moment.
but even for me, everything like that, like especially when you spoke about animals, it's like I understand completely what you mean when you speak about animals and the animal spirit and so on,
Mm.
because if you ask me, it's like we have all of these invisible principles
Yes.
running reality.
Mm.
So of course it's going to manifest through certain living things
I'm
and
happy
so
you're
on, and
saying that.
that's how I kind
Mm.
of see it. So but at the same time it's like I think I view that and any other synchronicity happening in kind of the same way,
It's like
and
the
and I
same
do.
energy.
Yeah, to me it's simply like confirmation.
Mm.
That's how I treat it,
Like
as
a reminder.
confirmation.
Yeah.
And if I'm very like egotistical, if I just go about my day, in automatic mode, and I go around, uh, that doesn't really happen.
Mm.
But it happens when I pay attention.
Exactly. And
So
then it's almost like you are aware you're paying attention, and then these things arise, and then there's an extra level of like, oh,
yes,
me doing this paying attention thing
yes,
allows me these
yes.
experiences.
Yeah, and in a way, I mean, you can argue how it might be something like confirmation bias.
Oh
It might
yeah.
be things like that.
Oh, absolutely.
Obviously, you can argue about things like that, but in the end, there have been instances where in my logical mind, I really can't try and explain it away
Mm.
as coincidences, and it's instances like that is much more significant than just the regular little ones.
Yeah.
Sometimes the regular ones happens, and I think
You pass them by pretty
coincidence,
easily.
maybe
Yeah.
whatever. But sometimes it's like 7, 8, 9 times in a row,
Exactly.
and then I
And you're like,
mean,
It's
yeah, my
sometimes
yeah,
sometimes it becomes uncomfortable. And like something you shared that's been like stuck in my head that I want to touch on again
yes,
is I call them simulacrum, right?
okay,
So simulacrum can be when a bunch of things come together to believe something new gets created out of that belief.
okay,
I believe Jesus is a
yes,
simulacrum,
okay,
right? So Jesus exists within the minds of all of the Christians believing in him right now, right?
okay,
And the simulacrum of Jesus that exists in me is a white guy,
okay,
right? And
okay,
probably for you as well,
yeah,
weirdly enough,
obviously,
right? But that is not who Jesus was,
yeah,
if Jesus was a real entity. And I feel it's the same thing with like cats, right? Cats, dogs,
mm,
like there is this simulacrum of them that exists beyond just this plane, right? Like the cat energy, the lion, the tiger, and then the house cats all have like similar features, that feline, sharp
yes, yes,
ears, way of
yeah,
being, way of interacting with the world. And I
okay,
believe these things come from a higher source. And the
okay,
human being, right, is in the same way a reduction of the simulacrum that is God.
okay.
So that in that way that every single person has that same divinity that Jesus was trying to tell us that we have
Yeah.
inside of us.
Yeah, you see that's really a. I'm gonna be honest with you. That's one of the more difficult questions when it comes to Christians who have experienced different things with psychedelics and different, you know, meditations and so on. And especially like with me, I regularly find myself in a place where I feel extremely conscious,
Yeah,
you know, and that is to me, that is my prayer life, you
exactly.
know. I do pray, I do say words, I do all of those things,
Mm.
but it's very important to me not to be not to be a Christian because it's my culture,
Yeah.
you know, because that's to me, I mean, your entire view of God can be within your little ego bubble,
Oh yeah.
you know, it can be
It
completely
can
just
it
your
can be
ego.
tainted. Yeah, exactly,
Yes,
by your
yes,
ego bubble.
yes, absolutely. So,
Mm.
so to me, the real, the that which is legit, you know, is outside of that.
Okay.
You know, it's outside of that. I can't. It's in there where you get really like, where you get angry and you're like, no, but I believe this, and
Mm.
all of those things, you know. But to me, it's important. It's important to realize, and that's actually that touches on the Bible as well for me, you know. When you really look at the Bible, I don't know if you know how much you know about Jordan Peterson.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so have you watched these biblical lectures?
Some of them.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so I'm a very big fan of Jonathan Peterson, and especially his podcasts with Jonathan Badger. So they speak about the symbolic world,
Yeah.
and I don't know if you've seen any of if you've seen any of their interpretations of the Bible in a symbolic way.
I can't say that I have, no. But please do enlighten me.
So it can, obviously we can speak about this for 3 hours. So
There's
I'm
a
not
lot of
gonna I'm not
information,
gonna
yeah.
yeah, but it basically comes down to, you know, there's two ways of viewing the Bible. You know, you can get very angry about some of the things happening in the Bible and all of that and all of that if you look at it through the lenses of your ego,
Mm.
you know, because you interpret it as
Unjust
yeah,
sometimes.
and you interpret it as things happening here,
Yeah.
you know. So for me, for instance, if we look at different patterns that keep on repeating, narrative patterns that keep on repeating in the Bible,
Yeah.
you know, different archetypes that keeps on coming up in the Bible, you know, if we look at things like that, then the more nitpicky things, the more nitpicky physical things completely fall away,
Mm.
because it's about meaning,
Yeah.
you know, it's about meaning. so
And
so
pattern recognition, I guess, as well.
yes, absolutely.
Mm.
And usually when I start to realize something about a specific part, let's say in the Bible, usually how I find confirmation that I am close to the truth in a way is if I see the pattern repeating.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? If I
Mm.
if I see the pattern repeating. So you can view, to me, that narrative world. I mean, you can speak about the spirit world, you can speak about all of these different things. But in the end, when it really comes down to it, to me, I mean, everything in this physical world is run by invisible forces, you
Mm.
know? So people, when they think of the spirit realm or whatever, they think of seeing like little see-through entities or whatever. They keep on thinking about seeing, you
Mm.
know? We need to get past just wanting to see
The senses.
in a physical way.
Yeah.
You know, we need to get past that, because I mean, everything is driven, it, the spiritual world or the invisible world, let's say, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, all of the different principles that we find are working in reality.
Yeah.
It's the spirit world manifesting,
Yeah.
you know.
Like I'm
And
so happy that you're going into this trip. Sorry, please
yes,
continue.
no,
Like
carry on,
the
carry
the,
on.
the place that it's taking me to is that conversation I had with my dad, right? Trying to explain to him what I mean when I say this world as we see it right now is illusion, right?
Hmm.
Because it was that same principle where we only believe something is real if we can see it,
Yes,
right? But Wi-Fi is real.
yes,
We can't see it,
yes,
but it's literally powering the stream right now.
yeah.
It's very much real. And for instance, to kind of like touch on what you mentioned with the invisible world, there is an invisible world happening behind the screen right now,
Mm,
right? Where processing is happening, bits are being flipped, information is being packaged and then being sent up into a network.
mm,
And even though we know all of those things intuitively, it's not something we get to see,
yes,
right? It's creating this experience. And in this physical form, our senses form, we want to be able to see things,
yes,
right? And pattern recognition is what the human is made to do,
yes,
right? We're supposed to notice patterns. And as you mentioned,
It's a survival tool.
it's literally
Yes.
a survival
Yeah.
tool. And the Bible, I believe that's why it's a magical artifact. By the way, I believe the Bible is an actual
Okay.
magical artifact
Okay.
because
I
it,
do too.
yeah, it's
Probably for
for
kind of
different
different
reasons,
reasons, but yeah.
exactly. To me,
Okay.
it's kind of like simulacrum, one of them, right? Like the amount of power that people apply to them, and then the other side, it's the amount of time for patterns to be recognized, right? So,
Okay.
and in my mind, the pattern I recognize over and over again is the infinity symbol,
Okay.
right? Chicka, 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 chicka,
Okay.
chicka, over and over and over again.
Okay.
The ebbs and flows of our personal experiences, the ebbs and flows in our relationships, that ego perspective, right? Where you create like almost a high point, and then you believe you are that high point, forgetting that you are the rest of the loop as well,
Yes, I
right?
see what
And
you
then it
mean.
creates a separation because you believe you're on one side instead of the other.
Yeah.
And I feel it's the same thing with the spiritual realm,
Okay.
right? We
Okay.
believe we are in the physical realm right now, and we're
Yes.
not in the spiritual realm,
Yes.
which I don't believe is true.
Me neither.
I believe they're intersecting at all
Me
points.
too.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I completely agree with you. I mean, if you look at what, when I speak about the spirit realm, I think people are very, very disappointed sometimes because people hear about my testimony, what happened to me, the way I came to faith, all of those different things. And they want to come to me and they want to speak about certain things like, let's say, a show or whatever, and there's demons and all of these things and whatever. And it's not like I'm saying I don't believe in evil entities or anything like that. I mean, my personal conversion story has something to do with that in the first place.
Yeah.
You know, but I think people are disappointed sometimes when they realize what I really believe the spirit realm actually is. Because if you look at it, the narrative world is what allows anything to happen in the physical world in the first place. You know, before I came here, why am I here now? It's because there was something in the invisible world which I took part in, which
Interfacing
made
with.
this a reality.
Yeah.
You know, so that's why, you know, you get these Christian cliches, even like everything has to happen in the spirit world first before it can happen in the real world, and people don't really realize what they're saying. It's extremely true, but I don't think people necessarily realize what they are saying. And to me, I think when it comes to the Bible, it's extremely important for me to view the Bible as a book about that world, the
Okay.
narrative world. You know, it's about meaning. It's about all of these different things, because there is so much meaning you can find. Let's say out of the story of Cain and Abel,
Yeah.
it's 15 seconds long. The amount of meaning packed in that story is absolutely insane. But what do you get? Now you get someone, an atheist or whoever, a skeptic or whoever, comes around looking at the story of Cain and Abel, and they're like, oh no, this is logically inconsistent. This is logically inconsistent. And how could Cain go away if they were the only humans? And you are completely
Missing the
and
point.
utterly missing the point. Because let's say we started to realize certain things about reality and even about the unseen world, how would you attempt to communicate them?
You can. It's
And
impossible.
that's why stories, and especially stories repeating like that,
Yeah.
is kind of the closest you can
Exactly.
get to.
So I resonate 100% with what you just said, and that's what I've been trying to say to my dad as well, where he believes, and I don't know if you believe this as well, so
Okay.
maybe that's something we should establish.
Okay.
Do you believe that the Bible is the actual words of God?
Yes, I do.
You see, like
I
that's
absolutely
that's
do.
where there's dissonance for me, because even though I agree completely with you, I believe that the human beings that were writing the Bible, that were writing these stories to try and share this higher metaphysical understanding with people, were the exact same human beings I am right now, right? And in the same way that, for instance, on these streams, sometimes someone will tell me, "Wow, what you just said was great," right? And I'll be like, "What did I say?"
Yeah.
Because it wasn't me,
Yeah.
technically,
Yeah.
right? I come into this space and then I open myself to divine wisdom,
Yeah.
to flow of energy, right? To
Yeah.
that intersection
But-
point between spirit and
Yeah.
reality.
But
And
yeah.
then from that place, I feel truth arises. And I feel even though that truth could arise in the Bible, I don't know if it is the truth that arises, from a perspective of this is God's words, right?
Yes.
Unless it's from my perspective where I believe you're God in the same way that I'm God, in the same way Pippi is, the trees are,
Yeah.
in that way. And okay, so my mind is like running in
Ah,
multiple
go
different
ahead.
fractals at
Go
the same
ahead.
time.
I'm with you.
The amount of again, as you mentioned, right? Like non-believers, skeptics notice the amount of dissonance in the Bible, right? Where and like it's like messing with my brain right now because I agree completely with you on the fractal of these stories are supposed to communicate things to you that are larger than just the story itself, larger than just the bodies,
Yes.
larger than just the physical, happening.
Yes.
But at the same time, they are, at least in a lot of spiritual minds, or at least a lot of Christian minds, held as actual things that you can see, right?
Mm.
Things that actually happen.
Yeah.
For instance, I don't believe that the whole Adam and Eve story actually happened. I don't.
Mm.
I believe it's again a simulacrum, a story that's supposed to communicate an understanding to you,
Mm.
right? And then
Yes.
we can go into depth of that as well. For instance, psychedelics,
Mm.
right? I believe, honestly, that psychedelics used to be a massive part of human civilization and a part of the way we would interface with this spiritual realm,
Mm.
right? Because you've noticed, you take enough psychedelics, and then suddenly the layers of perception melt,
Yes.
and suddenly you're like, oh shit, there's a lot more going
Yes.
on than
Yes.
I was paying attention
Yeah.
to. And in the same way, the fruit of the boom van goed en kwaad, the
Yeah.
tree
The
of
tree of the
uh,
knowledge of good and evil.
evil,
Yeah. The
exactly.
bad tree.
Yeah,
Yeah.
can be seen as psychedelics, an
Mm.
analogy for psychedelics.
I absolutely know.
You
Yes.
see,
Yes.
so I feel in the deepest part of myself that the Bible and the Catholic Church primarily was like trying to consolidate power,
Mm.
right? Where they were trying to, at least in that point of existence, and I understand that that was what was necessary. We're trying to
Mm.
control people, to
Mm.
try and keep them in a certain mode of existence.
Mm.
Because if every single person have had the experiences that you had with your psychedelic trips, right? Like people literally come to you asking you for your insight because they
Yes.
believe you have something they don't.
Yes.
And I believe psychedelics show you it's inside of you,
Okay.
right? There's no information outside of you that needs to be found. You need to look inside.
Okay. I get what you mean. But first of all, I just want to say, like, when it comes to the Bible being the Word of God,
Mm.
there's just a little disclaimer I have to say. Is when I say I believe it's the Word of God, I have to be honest. I don't believe every single word is directly from Him, but I
Mm.
do believe every single word is inspired by Him.
Okay, that,
Okay,
that I can agree
so
with.
that is
Hmm.
and this might be a bit shocking to you, but the majority of true believers I know believe that as well.
Okay.
So I think there are so many things. There's such a big gap between the type of community you're in and the type of community that I'm in that we
Hmm.
don't realize how many things
Are
that we
similar.
disagree on
Hmm.
is a language problem.
Exactly.
You know,
And
it's a language
you
problem.
can we can go for hours into that conversation as well, where our language was orchestrated this way,
Yeah,
right? So that we have
yeah.
dissonance between each other.
No, and even like when it comes to the Catholic Church, like no true believer, and I'm telling you now, and if someone believes I'm wrong, that's what it
It's
is.
an opinion you're shared.
But no true believer that I know, even online at church, people I know personally, people I don't know personally, no true believer I know, in any way, in any way, like would now I'm thinking of the English word, um,
Afrikaans?
vereenzelvig. This
Uh,
is
Vereenzeldig. Associate, yeah.
associate themselves with the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
You know, but at the same time we have to address a lot of the misinformation, let's say, for instance, when it comes to the Bible and how it came to be. You know, there's so many people who simply believe there's this one emperor who wrote the Bible or who just compiled it together.
Mm.
And in the end, that is simply, absolutely, in every way, not true. Like historically, it's not true. Like every remember, Nay, when we speak about Bible scholars and we speak about theology, I study theology.
Mm.
They don't teach me what to believe. This is very important. It's like any scientific subject, for instance. Now, before this, I studied astrophysics, so I know a lot about how the scientific method works, and especially how they teach you to think scientifically.
Yeah.
So they don't tell you what to think. They
Mm.
don't.
They
And
give you
with
the tools
and
basically.
with theology, it's exactly the same.
Yeah.
At no point in our studies or in any biblical scholar studies, at least from an accredited place where you can study theology, tell you what to think. But they do tell you how to search for the truth in the biblical text.
Yeah.
So they help you to understand context. They help you to understand cultural differences. They help you to understand where all of the different manuscript copies came from which we compiled the Bible.
Like, and
You know,
I'm happy that you're saying that, because there is a lot of books that got cut, right?
yes, that's true. And when it comes even to those books, like I've looked into this very heavily. When it comes to the books who have been cut, like let's say for like an instant classic would be the Gospel of Thomas.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
And that
so
was so good,
because
dude.
I know there's a lot of people who feel the way they feel about the Gospel of Thomas and so on.
Have you read it?
I have read it.
What do you feel about it?
And I have differing opinions over it, and not for the reason maybe you would think. It's
Okay.
like I get the things that it's saying, but at the same time, the things that are hidden from us according to certain people that is not said in the Bible is said in the Bible. The difference is if you don't read it looking for the truth,
Yeah,
you're not going to find it.
exactly.
If you read it in a skeptical way, you're not going to find it. And it's that way with anything. It's that way with anything. You have to be as unbiased as you possibly can.
Open yourself up
Yes.
to it.
And when it comes to the Gospel of Thomas, the unfortunate, and this is where I have the other opinion, when it comes to the Gospel of Thomas and all of the other books that were cut out, the proof of where those books came from is simply not enough.
Yeah.
It's not enough. Like, let me give you an example. We have books in the Bible. When we look at historical characters, I mean, I believe Jesus was an actual character that walked on the earth, not because the Bible said so, but because I was looking for truth, and I looked at everything history has to offer. When you look at where the Bible came from and all of the manuscripts and all of the proof there is for Jesus' existence, when it comes to ancient characters, he is by far, overwhelmingly, by far the most nou probeer I'm thinking in Afrikaans.
Okay.
Overwhelmingly the most the ancient character we can be the most certain of who existed. And if you start to compare that with other ancient characters, I mean, next to him is Homer. Homer was a poet.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Now Homer is the second most accredited historical character. And when you look at the manuscript copies, when you look at the proof we have of the fact that Homer actually wrote those things, historians look at a few things. So people say, some of the first writings of Jesus only came 150 years after his death. And for some people, that's a problem. But what we have to realize is before that, that is by far the earliest of any ancient historical character and ancient historical writing overall.
We have, yeah.
Yes, and at that same time, it's like when you look at the writings of Homer, even when you look at the writings of Plato and Aristotle, Homer, within 1,500 years of Homer writings, now I can't remember the book's name, within 1,500 years of Homer writing that, there have been 700 manuscript copies found of the original text.
Yeah.
Okay, 700 within 1,500 years. With Jesus, within 150 years, there's within the first 150 years, there's more than 5,000 manuscript copies already found. When you apply the same time period, it goes from 5,000 manuscript copies to 30,000.
That's really cool information.
So when it really comes to looking for the validity of this character really walking the earth, if you really want to be as unbiased as you can, you have to realize if you don't believe Jesus was a physical character, you can't believe in Aristotle or Plato. There's way less evidence for their existence than there was for Jesus's existence. And that's a powerful argument. You know?
I mean, I get the argument you're making, but at the same time, I'm going to touch on what you
Okay.
mentioned about the time gap,
Okay.
right? Where, just for instance, can you tell me, like something about your dad in
Mhm.
detail? For instance, like his dad was a pastor. Is he still a pastor?
Yes, he's still a
Yeah,
pastor.
so
Yeah.
he grew up with a pastor dad, and I felt like maybe a part of you was rebelling, right? Like you mentioned
Yes.
beautifully, you didn't want to believe in Christianity because it was part
Yes.
of your culture.
Yes.
You wanted to
I was
believe,
rebelling.
yeah,
Absolutely. Yes.
exactly. And I'm definitely the same way as well, where
Yes.
we're expected to believe in
Mm.
Christianity with the kind of surroundings we're in
Mm.
right now. And if you don't, you're one of the out people.
Yeah.
And I feel like our
I think that's
character,
kind of changing, but I get
yeah,
what you
it's
mean.
definitely
Yes. Yes.
changing with
Yes.
like our
Yes.
the internet basically,
Yeah.
our attachment to more information. But the thing for me is, like, just if you had to tell me a story about your dad, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then I had to go back 20 years. Tell me a story about your dad from 20 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then I have to like skip, another 130 years past. I wouldn't be able to believe
Mm-hmm.
anything that is being said to me. And then again, I would like to offer the simulacrum kind of like explanation
Yes.
for it. And that's how I have come to, and I've done the research as well, right? Like especially the time distance. And I understand what you meant about the manuscripts. I believe it's one of the most beautiful stories. I do,
Okay.
right?
The Bible
The Jesus
or
story,
Jesus'
the
story.
Jesus
Okay.
story, right? And I believe every single human being has that story
Okay.
intrinsically as well, right? That story of self-sacrifice, that
Yes.
story of still loving your friends even if
Mm.
they betray you, that story of knowing you're
Mm.
walking into hell and
Yes.
still doing it from a place of
Yes.
love, that story of embracing your cross, right?
Yes.
Whatever that cross
Absolutely.
may be,
Yes.
that story of me and my God are one,
Okay.
right? Believing that at the point where you would die for
Yes.
it. And knowing if you die, that's okay as well. And crucifixion wasn't a special event, right? During Jesus'
It wasn't.
crucifixion, like
Absolutely
a
not.
lot
Yes.
of people got
Yes.
crucified.
Yes.
But he became like this node, right, of information, of like an understanding that is so beautiful that people became obsessed with it, right?
Mm.
Because it was, I feel, again, coming back to the analogy of sharing stories to try and communicate some sort of higher
Yes.
understanding, that story communicates, I feel, the highest human
Mm.
understanding.
I absolutely agree with you.
Mm.
I agree with you that it communicates the highest human understanding of that. And at the same time, Jesus, I think when I look at the story of Jesus, you know what I see? I see when you take this narrative world, when you take this narrative world and this physical world, when I look at Jesus and I look at all the evidence, which is overwhelming, overwhelming to me, the amount of evidence there is. Mind you, this is coming from a guy when I looked at it who was very critical of it.
Mm.
So it's not like
You were
it's
listening to
just
someone
confirmation
biased for
biased,
it, yeah.
but to me, it's like that world, the narrative world, and the physical world, the world of action and the world of things, whatever you can say. At that time, they touched.
Mm.
You would hear Jordan Peterson also talking about this. But at that time,
Have you
there
seen, like,
was
he's been having a hard
he's
time with
been
your.
he's been having a hard time. He's been having a really hard time. Yes, he's been having a really
and
hard
I and
time.
I honestly believe, like, and this might be my personal
Yes,
bias. I believe he's having such a hard time because of his exploration of the Bible.
yes,
I honestly
yes,
do, because it's messing with him in a way where he understands that there is truth, right? And I feel like that is maybe the thing that I've noticed in my life. I'm not discrediting Christianity because I grew up with Christian parents,
mm,
and because they were the way they were, I turned out the way I am, right? So I wouldn't wish for them to be differently. I don't want them to change because if they weren't the way they were, I wouldn't be myself, right?
okay,
But
okay.
that understanding doesn't make them right.
I understand what you
You
mean.
know, like
I
that's
understand.
so, and it's the same thing for me with the Bible. Like, even though you might gain insight, you might grow, you might learn things about yourself, there might be truths in the Bible, doesn't make the Bible true in and of itself,
Mm.
right? In the same way where if I write a book, right? If you read Meditations, for example, by Marcus Aurelius,
No, I haven't. I
amazing.
know about it though.
I
Yeah.
would I highly recommend you read that one as well. It's like, it was never supposed to be published, right? That was him writing things for himself. And instead of these truths being communicated in a way where it's like story based, as in higher awareness type of communication, it's just a dude struggling to get up in the morning,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
Like that was like, and I feel in my personal experience, I would rather listen to Marcus Aurelius's teachings than Jesus' teachings because of how relevant it is to my current experience, right?
Okay.
It has simplified it in a way where I understand this human experience more. Like Marcus Aurelius, during his, ruling time, was the most powerful human on earth.
Mm.
And he was ruling during the midst of a plague.
Yeah.
Imagine you are the ruler of a whole, like space so vast you cannot even fathom it.
Mm.
Literally, the human brain cannot understand how much space that is.
Yeah.
And then people are dying by the millions.
Mm.
You smell rotting flesh
Yeah.
in the streets, and then still you have these insights, these understandings, these levels of maturity. And his story as well, right? He was also betrayed.
Yes.
He was betrayed by
Yes.
one of his, closest people. And
Mm.
instead of killing
Mm.
him, he still, forgave him for that.
Mm.
And in that same way, I feel like these truths, right? Jesus' truth,
Mm.
Marcus Aurelius' truth, is with all of us,
Yes.
right? And even though Marcus Aurelius' words might be true to me, they're not the truth,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
They're not the truth.
Yes.
And I feel a lot of Christians believe that the Bible is the truth. And I feel that that kind of collapses all of the exploration that there is within this vast infinity we're a part of.
That's one of the that's why it's so. Just before I say this part about the Bible, it's like when it comes to Christ's story and Marcus Aurelius and even Jordan Peterson's, I kind of see the same pattern repeating.
Yeah, exactly.
It's that archetypal pattern repeating.
Yeah.
It's a Christ-like character, and they have to suffer for their righteousness in a way.
Yes,
You know,
exactly.
and I believe that's what's happening to Jordan Peterson as well.
It's happening to everyone.
You know, so and to me, like
Yeah, exactly.
when I'm in church and I speak the truth, people hate it.
Mm-hmm.
People absolutely
It
hate
hurts.
it. It hurts.
Yeah.
Nee?
Hallo,
But-
haat mij, want ik zeg jullie waarheid.
Yes.
They hate me because I say the truth.
Yes.
Mm.
When it comes to let me just get back to the point we were making before I
So,
said that.
truth, the Bible being seen as an ultimate
Oh,
truth.
and you saying it's not.
Yeah.
It's not the
and
truth.
it collapses your
Yeah.
ability to explore
But
more
that,
truth.
you see, I think we have to see the part that human error also has in that whole situation. You know, because when you really look at the teachings of Christ and even the teachings of his apostles, the teachings of everyone who started the church after Christ and everything, when you look at those teachings, it's the main focus is not to try and get to this place where you think you are right. The message it conveys is a message of not being arrogant and saying, I know.
Yeah.
So I in a way I wanna kind of in a way I kind of feel like I want to defend the Bible and the messages of the Bible, which I really believe are pure. I want to defend that against human error.
Yeah.
You know, even like bad things that happen, like the Crusades and so on and whatever. You know, people look at that, and it's so funny how when we do good things, we love praising ourselves for the decisions we made. But when we make bad decisions, like in that case, you know, it's easy to point the finger at God, even though everything that He taught them is against what they did. You know, everything.
You see,
so
but then it creates this understanding that more evil has been committed under the guise of good than evil, right? Think about that.
I honestly, I do understand what you mean, but I think it's a very big stretch to say more evil.
So,
You know,
like,
when-
okay, let's just talk
Yes.
about the Crusades, for example. Those dudes straight up believed they were doing the will of God.
Yes,
They
absolutely.
were like,
and they were wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
Completely wrong. Yes.
But I honestly believe that the only way for you to commit such atrocities is if you believe you're doing something right. That's what I say.
Okay.
Right? So
I can
even
get on board
Genghis
with that.
Khan. Genghis
Yes.
Khan and his, Mongoloids, they believed they were doing something right.
Yes.
Like they killed hundreds of
Yeah.
millions of people.
Yeah.
But they were like, yeah, this is what we're
I can
doing.
get
and
on board
it's-
with
it's
that.
Right. So it's like this, again, as you mentioned beautifully, this want to believe I am right
Yes.
is the thing we should try to get away
Yes.
from. And I've shared this beautifully on stream, that infinity symbol to me.
Yes.
It is being right, being everything, and being nothing, right?
Yes.
Nothing and everything is collapsed, contained within
Okay.
infinity. And when you acknowledge you know nothing, you know more of the everything than
Absolutely.
you know if you claim you
Absolutely.
know
Yes.
everything, right?
Yes, if I want to know how much someone really has explored reality and tried to figure things out, I ask them, how much do you know?
Mm.
If they pretend like they know something, then I already know,
Yeah.
this is probably not the guy I want to have a conversation with or speak with. I do believe you can be certain about
Mm.
certain things. You
You
can
can
be
notice
certain.
patterns.
Yes, you can notice patterns and you can be very certain of certain things. But I think it's very important for you to also be able to expand your mind in regards to that.
Mm.
Because if you actually follow the same teaching that we sometimes want to form into this very hard doctrine, it says you're not allowed to do that.
Exactly. Dogma.
You're not allowed to do
Mm.
that in the first place. That was one of the problems. Like, one of the examples you can use is the Pharisees in the Bible. Jesus had a massive problem with the Pharisees, and the reason he had a problem with the Pharisees was because of doctrine.
Mm.
They started to say, you know what, we understand everything, we understand God, we understand the law, we understand the Messiah, we understand
This is how it
everything.
is.
This is how it is. And because of that, they missed the actual Messiah.
Yeah.
They
They feel
refused to
they were
accept
like,
him
nope.
because of their doctrine.
Because they believed they were right and they already knew
Yes.
what was right.
Yes. So I think that's what makes it very tragic. And
Mm.
I understand your point where you said, more atrocities have been committed under the
The guise
guise
of
of,
good.
of good.
Mm.
Like, but I think it's in the end, I think kind of you always do what you think is good in the moment.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not saying that's like, I mean, a human
No,
in the
I
default
agree with
form,
that actually. Yeah.
like
We're
even
doing the
every
best we
form of
can, if you
yeah,
will.
and even every form of instant gratification, like in that moment of weakness, you truly believe
Mm.
that this is the
This
this
is
is the
it's
right
gonna
thing
make me
to
feel
choose.
better. It's going to
Yes,
help in some way or another,
yes,
and I'm willing to, for instance, the ice cream. I'm willing to pay the bodily damages will do because it's going to give me a sense of pleasure in this
yes,
moment.
all of that.
Mm.
Yes, absolutely. But I do think there's a difference between people committing atrocities thinking it's the right thing to do, and like people committing atrocities under the guise of, let's say, Christianity, because that has also happened.
Yeah.
That has also happened. But atrocities committed under, like, let's say, for instance, everything going on in, I'm when it comes to political views, I'm not necessarily left or right or whatever, but
Fortunately.
I am more towards the right because of the insanity going on. You know, the insanity going on at the left.
Your
And
Jordan
what
Peterson
I
is coming out.
yes, but that's true. That's true. It's true. But like that's one of the reasons.
Mm.
And it's the same kind of ideologies being preached
Yeah.
by these guys are the same things that have committed the largest genocides that have ever occurred in the history of humanity.
Yeah. The
You know,
USSR.
yes, and even there, I believe the leaders committing those things
They're
thought they
they're
were
thinking they're
doing the
doing it for
right
good.
thing.
Exactly.
You know?
I would want to take a little bit of an interlude to open the space up to
Yes.
some friends, see if they have some things to say. Like we have some, you can actually read here.
Okay.
It's gonna be a little bit easier. The comments don't keep disappearing here. There we go. Let's see.
Okay. Let's
Uh,
see.
Toast. Hey, is Toasty here too? Toast below. Sending you love. Gobbity goo. Gateway is here. Connor too. Hey dude. Brother Ryan is actually one of the friends that, and when you mentioned that everybody thinks they're doing what's right or
Hmm.
they're doing their best,
Yes.
that's something that Brother Ryan likes to echo a lot. And he says here, Toast. Would this statement be controversial? Art may be inspired by a miracle of oneness and interconnected awareness. If that is what is meant by God's word, I would accept that. So then you can see the Bible as art that is inspired by a miracle of oneness and interconnected awareness, right? I feel like I kind of resonate with that as well.
I obviously
There's so many comments and I don't
there's so
want
many
to
comments.
miss any
Okay.
of them.
Okay. Let's
Jordan
just take a
Peterson has some
moment
pretty
first.
toxic viewpoint opinions. He may call truth. I I value Jordan Peterson as much as I do any other person, but I don't idolize him, right? A part of me used to, right? Especially a 19-year-old version of myself, right? Because he echoed the truth of self-discipline.
Yes.
He echoed the truth of taking responsibility.
Yes.
Echoed the truth of uh, save yourself before you try to save other people.
Yes.
And that I
Clean
very
your room.
exactly.
Yes.
You have to try and clean your own room before
Yes.
you try and clean the world. And that I really resonated with. But then the other side of it is his like fear-based sometimes mentality where like I think it's happening right now where his license is under
Yes.
fire
Yes,
for
it
the
is.
things that he said. And like I understand what he's standing for, and trying to police what people are allowed to say is very much not something that I stand for
Mhm.
either, right? Because I like being free to express
Yes.
myself. And I kind of lean into slash joke about the whole inclusivity thing, where if I
Okay.
say, I love you, dear sister, and I mean, and dear brother,
I
and
know,
they,
every
and
other
yeah,
thing.
exactly, because
Start saying the
it
alphabet.
it's not so much that I don't want to include people,
Yes.
but in that want to include people, now I am excluding other people, right?
Yes.
Like literally, I'll start right, men and women, right?
Yes.
And for the longest time, that used to be everyone.
That used to be okay. Yes.
Exactly, and now men and women isn't just everyone. It's like, okay, men and women and theys. Now
But what
still,
about them? And
exactly.
what about these guys?
So
Yes, I
it's
see what you
so
mean.
it's
Yes.
like it's just more separation.
Yes.
Even though we're trying to be inclusive,
Yes.
it creates a sense of separation in myself, and that's why I do not agree with it. Hello, ma. Mama gaan ons ook join for the stream eendag, nee. Well, we'll get mom to join us. Ek wil regtig hê mom moet Engels moet selfs, hoor. Oh, that's true. My mom doesn't speak English that well. And she doesn't really, enjoy it that much. Jesus was a wise man. This I agree with. Jesus was a man. Was Jesus a man or a god? That's a good question to ask. I believe he was a man, right? In the same way I am a man. But I also believe he was God in the same way I am God. In the same way
Okay.
you are God. I believe all of us are. And I don't believe this from the perspective of trying to lift myself up. I do this from a perspective of how do I convince myself to treat everybody well, right?
Okay.
And in my personal pattern recognizing, right, I
Mm.
notice the only way for me to treat everyone, the trees, the animals, the people well, is to unanimously see them as God.
Okay. I understand what you mean.
Yeah, so
You know,
that's why I show up in that way.
you know, when it comes to that point, and you speak about consciousness and consciousness being God and all of that. That's a massive conversation
Yeah.
to have. Obviously, it's and even with your whole situation about everything being God and so on and so on. There are certain things where if you even use just logic, you have to realize, okay, listen. So if this plant, I don't care how it got here, I don't care about the process. We can argue about evolution all day long. The fact is, it's here.
In
It
this
is
moment.
here in this moment, and it could not have been here, but it's here. Okay. So
Something
if you
instead of
wanna,
nothing.
yes. So in my mind, at least, when I look at the world and I see things like this, I see an idea that came out of the mind of God.
Yeah, I completely
I
agree with
see an
that.
idea.
And I believe you're that idea in this moment.
I know you
And
do.
and for
Yes.
me, it's like God loved you
Yes.
so fucking much that He had you as an idea. Here you are,
Yes.
dude.
And I also believe I'm an idea that came straight out of his mind.
Mm.
And that logically, to me at least, logically that you can't really say if you want to have faith in any kind of God, in any kind of universal God, at least, um, you can't really get around the fact that even though you can say, okay, maybe he created everything, and I don't believe this, he created everything and he left us. Okay? Then even still, you can't get past the fact that everything you see is still out of came from his mind in a way, So when I look at things like this, I see pieces of his mind.
Yeah.
So I look at planet Earth. I received senses. So um, let's say for instance, and I'm doing this with the biggest respect I can. If you could have created, let's say for instance, and you decided, you know what, I want to give whatever this created being is, I want to give it some form of purpose. I want it. I mean, you in God's shoes are infinite.
Mm.
Every possibility there can ever be. I'm going to create this being, and he has this infinite purpose of discovery,
Yeah. And
absolutely
experience.
discovering and
Yeah.
and that's how you discover,
Yeah.
eh? Through experience.
Exactly.
So okay, how am I going to do it? How am I going to do it? And this is how I kind of understand it, and I truly believe that's what's communicated in scripture. Like, how do I do it? Okay, so back to, like, from his perspective. Okay, so we want them to discover this part of me. Okay, so give them a sense to discover this part of me. So we call that smile. Okay, I want them to discover this part of me. I want them to discover this. And you can look at the senses, and now I go to the tree. And that's an idea. It's like me walking around in his mind. That's an idea, and now I can touch the idea. I can smell it. I can feel it. I can hear it.
Lick the
You know?
tree.
So
Taste.
what am I doing? I am experiencing, but I'm discovering.
Mm.
And it's in discovery where I even believe true worship. If you look at the Bible, every form of worship in the Bible actually comes from revelation,
Mm.
realizing something, discovering something from God.
Yeah.
And that, I mean, doesn't that happen every single time you discover something?
And it
It's
happens when
this
you're
moment of
still.
awe.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Like, be still and know I am God.
Yes.
As a fractal, right? And like, so I'm happy that you're diving into this, the whole mind perspective, because the way I see it is that mind is everywhere, right? And in everything. And then we interface with it, right? Like
Yes.
that discovery process, as you mentioned, that exploration process, that experiencing, where, and this is a little bit of a stretch, and I know that, right?
Okay.
I feel it is self-created again, right? Even though it is created, that tree is there right now. If I
Okay.
walk up to it, I can touch it.
Hmm.
If I didn't have the senses to perceive it, it might as well not,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
And I feel in that way, we don't give ourselves any honor in what we're perceiving right now. Where I feel this is heaven. That was day 777, right?
Yes.
I talked about that specifically.
Yes.
That we are already
I saw quite a bit of that
yeah,
stream.
we're in heaven right now. It is about the level of perspective, right? I can tell myself, oh, look at this shit tree. It throws thorns on the ground occasionally, and then
Sorry, my
these,
phone's ringing. No, that's fine.
or I can be like, oh, look at the awl, right? Look at those little white little lines. Sure,
Yeah.
they're thorns. Sure, if I step in them, it's not going to be fun. But the experience of stepping in the thorn in and of itself will be self-created,
I,
right?
I, I have to say I do agree with you. Why would you hate that experience, let's say, for instance? Because of comparison.
Yes.
Because we take this relative to this experience, and I as whoever you are,
As
I
ego.
I as ego, I prefer this experience. So I'm not happy with this experience.
Exactly.
I believe that's where all bad experiences come from. If there wasn't anything relative to that experience, it would have been the only experience. So I've seen one clip. What's that? There's so many shorts of him on YouTube. Sad Guru.
Yeah, Sadhguru.
Sad Guru, ne? That one clip of him where he says, "Who says that you are not already in heaven, but you're making a mess out of it?"
Yeah. We all are.
Yes, and
it's because we don't believe it.
yes,
Right.
But at the same time, it's like I think you can get so lost in your internal narrative. You become completely like an NPC in a game.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I also believe that government and everything when it comes to that is designed to try and keep you as mindless as possible.
Yeah.
To keep you like this NPC, not having the awareness you
So
have.
in my mind, I believe church does the same thing, right? Unfortunately,
Okay.
because it's like this is what you should be believing. So it creates like a barrier instead of you believing.
Yes,
Right.
but I do think, and I know why you say that. Nay, I really do know why you say that, and I think that's what makes it difficult as well, because even the church and things that happen in the church are subject to its leaders. And it's not that
And it's
that's
gonna
not
be
the case
human.
with every single church, let's say, out there.
Yeah.
For me, one of the biggest goals I have when I work with people is, and I'm going to say this in very amusing terms, I try to wake NPCs up.
Yeah.
That I think is one of the most important things you can do. You know, that's one of the most important things you can do. But I think, yeah, maybe you would agree with me, but maybe not in the same way. I do believe the way in which you do that is through Christ. You know, everything he represented, everything he taught, everything that he did was in a way to open that door. You
Christed
know,
consciousness.
yes, to open that door.
Mm.
You know, so that's why it's if to,
So like in my
yes,
mind that's
go,
coming up right now is just that Jesus was called the Christ,
yes,
right? So even before Jesus existed, that Christed energy was something that was unanimously understood. And then Jesus embodied that Christed energy to the point where they called him the Christ,
yes,
right? I believe that Christ is in all of us. I
okay,
do. And I call it Christ consciousness,
yes, I
where
know, I know the
yeah,
term, and I
the
know,
the
yeah,
the God reality that we talk about, right? Like the ultimate reality, then there is the embodied reality, and then there is the interfacing between. That is
yes,
Christ consciousness to me. Like that's what we're experiencing right now. And it is that, as you mentioned beautifully, that exploration slash experience process where once you're still, right? I can sit here and just look over this field and God will communicate with me. There will be an interfacing of information, but I feel like that information should be personalized, right? And I feel
okay,
like that is also one of the things that I notice within the biblical understanding, the church understanding, gets a little bit muddied, right? Where, and I do the same thing. I do the same thing
yes,
right here, where I come here with an intention, right? Like there's something that I want to talk about. The thing I'm going to talk about tomorrow, for example, is living like a tree, right?
okay,
Where your entire past, your upbringing, the things you've experienced, your psychedelic experiences, your relationship with your dad, et cetera, your schooling is like your roots,
okay,
right? These are the things that have now kind of like consolidated you into what you call your body, your ego.
yes,
Then there's the version of you, the trunk, that
yes,
you stand for in this moment,
okay,
the one you want to be, right?
okay,
And your roots is supporting because
yes,
maybe you fucked up, right? And you're like, I don't want to be that version of myself anymore. It's still a part of you. You can't completely unroot that part of yourself,
mm,
but now with that, you can grow a trunk
mm,
in the right direction.
mm,
And then your branches is the infinite
okay,
possibility in front of
yeah,
you. And what energy you put in, right, into certain ones that are going to grow, the ones that are going to have flowers, and the ones going to bear fruits.
yes,
And in my personal experience, I don't know that the belief system that there's something outside of me that's going to save me as a branch to put energy into
mm,
is one that I want to grow,
okay,
right? Because I feel like it will sap resources from my other branches that I could, instead of like expecting to be saved, save myself with. And
okay.
it's like I think I gave you
I completely understand what you mean. I think one of the, for me at least, one of the most important things that happened to me in my life, where salvation outside of myself was one of the most important things that happened to me,
mm,
was because the point that I found myself in, the point that I found my life in, I could not help myself.
okay.
I could not help myself in any way whatsoever. I
Why?
wasn't equipped to help. Okay, okay, let me rephrase. I could. I didn't know I can.
Mm,
Okay, let me rephrase it like that. You know, I didn't know I can. You know, but at the same time, there was a miracle that happened when I truly trusted in the fact that He, which I do believe, and I'm going to say this to the record, which I do believe is God.
mm,
I do believe Christ is God, and I do believe even though we do become one with Him according to Scripture, that's so important. Eh? According to that, I do still believe that He is the one human that represents all of humanity in the
okay.
Godhead. You
Mm,
know, I do believe that, and the message of what He has done and what it has done for my guilt, what it has done for everything in that moment of my life, it created something within me, which was completely a miracle. And I'm saying a miracle within hours. I mean, within seconds
A
of me truly
transformation.
a transformation, but a transformation that was like this.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean, I had so many psychedelic experiences with that, and you know how neuroplastic you are. With those
Open.
experiences, how
Yeah.
open you are, and how easily you change with those experiences, and that was nothing compared to what happened in that experience.
You
You
had
know,
a certainty in that
yes,
moment.
and also, you know, my heart and what I desired, that is what changed.
Okay.
And you know, and that's, to me, that's one of the most important things, because when we look at the Bible, we can speak about Christianity and about religion all day long, but Jesus made it very clear when he spoke about being born again, right? And to me, I believe being born again is what it's really about. And he said no one can see the kingdom of God if they are not born through the Spirit, okay? If they are not born through the Spirit. And we can speak about that the whole day long,
So
but to
and so
me,
just to like
yes,
on that,
yes,
I believe that born through spirit is living from your awareness instead of living from the ego, right? That's how
I
you in
can,
my world you get to
okay,
heaven. Like
okay,
again, Christ is within you, and you just have to
okay,
embrace that Christed spirit energy, that awareness, that
yes.
oh shit, here I am, right? And this is what I'm here
Yes.
for.
But at the same time, I do get what you say, and I agree in a way, but at the same time, I don't believe you can truly get there without Christ.
Okay.
You know, it's like, if you and this is a very long conversation, very condensed in one statement. I'm not doing it justice at all, but in the end, it's like, I do feel like enlightenment, you know, we all have access to whatever enlightenment is, and whatever
I
it
have a
truly is
definition
in
for
the
it. I'll let you finish.
but whatever it is in its fullest sense, or whatever, I do think that we have access to that, but I do also think that history has told us, and at least I believe, that no one has reached that point other than Christ himself. Okay, and this, I know we're going to differ there, and I'm telling you now, I'm not saying this for certain.
That yeah, you
I'm
don't
not,
know the
yes,
truth. This is
yes,
what you
but
believe.
I do believe enlightenment is a scam. I do believe it's
So
something. It's
I
something
so
that,
I agree, but
okay,
I agree from the perspective of it has been bastardized in our current society,
okay,
where enlightenment is now a sellable good, right? Which
yes,
I don't agree
yes,
with.
yes,
Enlightenment to me, and it's something I share in the stream as well. Enlightenment to me is when you realize, as a being of light, where you come from.
yes. I've heard you say
Yeah,
that before. Yeah,
exactly. Like
yeah.
if God is the sun, you are like a beam coming
I
out of that
understand what you
Godhead,
mean.
right?
Yeah.
And when you remember that energy of light that you are, that to me is enlightenment. And I feel like some people have created this romanticized narrative of what enlightenment's supposed to mean, where as soon as you become enlightened, now everything's easy.
Yeah, that's garbage.
That is
That's
so
absolute
garbage,
garbage. Yeah, yeah,
exactly.
absolutely.
And Ram Dass has a beautiful quote on that, where he goes, "If you think you're enlightened, spend a week with your family." And I'm like, yo.
Yeah, that's
I'm like, okay, I understand. Let's read
okay.
a few more
Let's read
comments.
comments.
Uh,
I think we pretty much failed the previous
well,
time
yeah,
we tried to
Wallace Gabi,
read
I don't think
comments.
I've seen Wallace here before. Sending you love, dear friend. It's nice having you too. Lolo. Like I feel like we're losing some comments. I read Jordan Peterson's first book, the 12 ones. It's
12 rules for life.
yeah,
Yeah.
I read that one as well. I like the whole lobsters one
Yes.
especially. I was like,
Yeah.
yeah. Anyway,
Yeah.
it's
I
a
actually
self-help
have
book.
that one, and then the next one, Beyond Order.
Beyond Order, yeah,
Yeah, I
Beyond
also
Chaos
have
and
that.
Order, right?
Yeah.
Um, the man, I think I think there's new comments loading as I'm trying to load them as well. Okay, that book that inspires it keeps happening. That inspires confidence, especially in young men. It's not all bad. It just enforces social ideas in toxic masculinity. Toxic masculinity to me is weak masculines, right?
Yes.
I feel people for some reason have attached toxic masculinity to this idea of oh
Yes.
I'm so strong, but that is to me the weak part of men, and I
Yes.
feel we need more strong
Yes.
men, not more
I do agree.
strong men,
You
right?
know, I do agree. A strong, a true alpha is a guy looking, I mean, a guy caring for his family, a
Mm.
guy doing what's
And
necessary
in
for
that
them,
book,
for his
that
community.
was
You know,
actually a part
that's
of it where he talked about like primate species, like the primate that grooms and takes care of the other primates
yes,
are the ones that ends up being
yes,
the alphas. And if
yes.
you're not like that, they just kill you. They're
Yes,
like, no.
it's not the loudest guy, it's not the guy
Mm.
who has the biggest muscles, it's not, but it's the guy who carries the community on his
Yes,
shoulders, you know, and
exactly.
that takes so much sacrifice. You know, that's the true alpha.
Yeah.
You know, so I also believe when it comes to the term of toxic masculinity, I think it it has gotten to a point where it's, I feel like it's almost useless to have a conversation about it in a sense because
Separation. Like to me, it's just separation where we're trying to be something we're not, right?
yes.
That I believe we're both always. Again, that Dega symbol in my
Mm,
mind is also the masculine and feminine part of myself, perfectly balanced in the middle, right?
okay.
Sure, I identify as a masculine individual, but I have long hair,
Mm,
and I like wearing nice clothing,
mm,
and I like smelling good, and I buy oils from
yeah.
friends that can smell nice, and I like taking a bath in oil occasionally, right? This doesn't make me any less of a man.
Yes.
But I feel this toxic masculinity perspective has arisen from this deep separation between self and other, right? Oh, I'm a man, and men do these things,
Yes.
and I'm going to only do these things and keep myself separate from these feminine things, right?
Yes.
And I feel that's what toxic masculinity is to me. It's just separation
Yes.
mentality, and that's, I feel, separation in my mind is what we're
Mm,
struggling with as humanity.
yes.
And unfortunately, I believe Christianity creates separation.
Okay, that's where we obviously disagree.
Please do
Yeah.
share your
I
perspective.
think Christianity can create Christianity.
That's okay.
Create and Christianity. I think
Mm.
that's a new word we should.
Christianity. That's a
Christianity.
cool one.
But that's a bad word, you know, it's created Christianity. But no, I'm joking. But I do believe Christianity can create separation. I
Yeah.
do believe it, absolutely. But I believe it creates separation in the same way that any good message can be taken out of context and used in the wrong way. That's how I believe it creates separation because I truly believe that every single church, every single pastor, every single one of these guys that I really believe are kind of leading people astray in a way, né? Leading people to be more asleep than awake and all of that, né? Um, when I look at what they teach, I always see separation in the teaching.
Yeah.
And what I mean with that is, everything, it's about balance. Even when it comes to what I believe, let's say, about the gospel with Christ, you know, even just saying that I believe in God, né? And even just saying that, the amount of like weight
You
it
can't,
puts on your
yeah, you can't
shoulders.
believe something and know it at the same time.
Yes. Yes, yes, honestly.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like the amount of moral weight it potentially can put on your shoulders is tremendous.
Yeah.
It's absolutely tremendous. So now we get churches, let's say for instance, that just focus on that point. About I mean, when we speak about justice, even when you speak about Jesus and what happened on the cross, for me, it's very important to understand the concept of justice.
Mm.
We believe that things that have obviously forgiveness and restoration and all of that is something that's very important. But at the same time, a criminal, all of us, at least sane people, believe that criminals need to pay for whatever crimes they
Justice needs
have
to be
committed,
done.
because we believe in the sense of justice.
Mm.
And in the same way, I believe in what Christ has done for us on the cross. It's that same justice. It's that same. God could have just said, you know what, there you go. I can do whatever I want because he can, in my opinion. I can do whatever I want. Cheers. But he's good and he's just. So
Mm.
instead of doing that, he's like the king who gave his own life to save the life of his family member. He's like the king who took the death sentence instead of his family member in order to save them. So
Mm.
payment has been made.
Yeah.
Justice has been served. But now you get to a part where certain churches, let's say for instance, only focus on this one part, on this part. So churches like that are the churches that no, hell and sin and turn around, turn or burn, and all of that, and all of that, you know. And I
Okay.
do believe justice and righteousness is a part of the character of God. But at the same time, you get the other side of the coin where it comes to the forgiveness of Christ. The fact that Christ says, you know what, you are already accepted.
Yeah.
You know, you are already accepted. You know, and even with the grace of God, if we, it's easy to say, yeah, it's kind of harsh to say we don't deserve it because we deserved punishment. But in the same way, to me, it's so much more beautiful if I receive a gift from Him, even though I have done nothing to receive it. That grace is so much more than, yeah, I expected that, thank you.
So,
You
like,
know what I mean?
what
So
was
but
beautiful to
but
me is I believe you're
yes.
receiving that gift in this moment, and that gift is your awareness,
Okay, I can get
right?
on board with that.
So that's again, as you beautifully said, we believe in a way the same things. We're
Yes.
just using different words to
Yes.
explain these depths of pattern recognition we've come
Yes.
to, and
Yes.
it's like a fractal, right? Like the fractal you're in and the fractal you've been in has been the Christian community. Your dad being a pastor, you've and right, like seeing your dad and then rebelling against your dad, not wanting to be like him, knowing that there's parts of you that is like him. I see it with my dad as well, obviously. There's so much again separation that wants to occur
Yes.
when the thing that unites us is our awareness,
Yes.
right? The thing that unites you and your dad is your awareness of his behavior, the way he shows up, the way that he interfaces with the world. And now you're interfacing with the world in the same way now, right?
Yes.
And to again, I see all of us as the same being. I see all of us as the same God peering from that point of awareness. And I keep noticing over and over again that as soon as we create a story where we we hope for something, right? Like there is a pie in the sky, there is uh, an entity that's going to step in for us so that when judgment comes, justice will be served. It causes a deep sense of dissonance in myself where I don't have to take as much responsibility for my actions as I could have if I believed that I was that thing that needs to take the responsibility, right? That needs to implement justice. And I've like lived in certain ways, and I feel this is something that came up in me as you were talking about justice as well. Weirdly enough, justice is something your monkey understands, not your mind.
Okay.
in
Explain.
in other words,
Elaborate.
if you
Yeah.
if you look at the studies that we've done on our primate ancestors, right?
Mm-hmm.
I do believe in evolution. They understand fairness, right?
Yes.
That is something that arises within them that hasn't arisen within the other animal species. Where, for instance, if you have two monkeys in a cage and you give both of them slices of cucumber, they'll have cucumber like it's the best thing ever because it's nice and watery, has some flavor to it,
Until you
nice
stop
cucumber.
giving one of them.
Or like, you can give only one of them and they'll share, right? Like they have
Okay.
that sense of fairness as well, and they'll
Okay.
share with the
Okay.
other one. But if you give one of them grapes and the other one cucumber, the one that gets cucumber will lose his mind
Okay.
because in his world that's not fair,
Okay.
right? And he'll get angry. Like I'm getting
Okay.
goosebumps just thinking
Okay.
about this because that's not fair. And in the
Yes.
same way, we as human beings, our justice system arose from, I believe, our monkey systems, the
Okay.
part of us that believes in fairness. But the mind can deal with things not being fair and continue, right?
I agree.
Where, for instance, this world we live in right now, the amount of wealth disparity, for example, that's not fair.
The other day on one of your streams, you spoke about this a lot. Yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
fair, and yet here we are still showing up for love, right? I feel like that is the power of the mind. So again, talking about all of us, everything being a thought of God, right? If you want to really dive into this topic, go read the Kabbalion. Very
Okay.
good read. Like the first statement is the all is mind, the universe is mental.
Okay.
So from that perspective, I believe fairness or justice or the ability to love arises from the mental space. Even though things might not be fair, and I understand completely how this justice system and this understanding of God stepping in for us, right, as a what's the word, as a bailout almost, right? Like he'll stand in for your sins, and that's why he died on the cross, and he'll take complete responsibility for it. I believe the monkey in us, the primate part of us, really resonates with that understanding because we believe things ought to be fair, but they're not. And
Okay.
that's not a it's not a bad thing
Yeah.
in my mind as well. I feel if things were fair, we wouldn't have the same depth of love we have as the
Yeah,
mind right
and
now.
I completely agree with you. And when it comes to the story of Christ, I truly believe no Christian, no, I don't even want to say the word Christian. It's such a cultural term.
Mm,
No believer believes that the story of Christ was fair.
mm,
And what I mean with that is like what drives me to be different, what drives me to take responsibility for my life, what drives me to it, because I think from the outside perspective you can look at that and like you said it's a bailout and it's like you don't have to take responsibility. From the outside perspective it might look like that, and to some people it is,
mm.
absolutely, to some people it is. I believe those people are called hypocrites, okay, according to scripture. But at the same time, I do believe what changes us is the grace of God. And the grace of God is the fact that that bailout has happened, and how in the way in which it happened through Christ. He did not deserve it. Absolutely. He was
He
the
was
one
pure.
person who did not deserve it,
Exactly. Yeah.
but he still did it. So it, in a sense, I it's the opposite. It's not fair at all. And at the same time, me, a person who does not deserve whatever that grace is, I do believe I don't deserve it.
Mm.
Nay? And we might differ there as well. But I just want to explain to you how beautiful this grace is as well. Like me, I, a criminal in the face of God, now I have been pardoned even though I do not deserve it.
Mm.
Not because
And that's beautiful.
not because I deserve it,
Yeah.
but because He's good.
Yeah.
And I see this in the church sometimes as well. You get people who start speaking about the gospel, let's say, and they say, yeah, how worthy you were, and that's why Christ has done it for you. And what they don't realize the amount of damage they are doing to the message of grace when you are starting to bring your own worthiness into the equation. But when you know you are not worthy, it's when that grace is so absolutely mind blowing,
I
where it changes your
like
life.
I feel I'm gaining understanding listening to you. And what you're saying makes complete sense to me. I just don't believe it. Right?
Okay,
And
yes.
I really do, right? Like especially with how beautifully you shared this understanding that you don't deserve this grace. And God being so good to pardon you. How beautiful that as a message is. I completely get that. But Yoss, there's this movie, dude, and I would want my dad to watch it, but I think it would unironically scar him.
Okay.
It's a movie called Mother.
Mother.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a Jennifer Lawrence movie that Brother Ryan suggested I watch. And the movie starts with watching a completely scorched building
Okay.
restore itself. And then from a bed that is completely burned, a woman arises. And then she wakes up. And then she looks for her partner. And then her
Okay.
partner isn't somewhere to be found in the house. And then she runs frantically, looking for him. And then
Okay.
she finds him eventually. And the story then progresses, right? And it's basically a biblical adaptation of the Adam and Eve, um, Adam and Eve into is like another fractal that they touch. Adam and Eve, Cain and Abel,
Okay.
and then ultimately the Jesus story
Okay.
is like completely encapsulated within that.
Okay.
But it's depicted in a way that is horrifying,
Okay.
like actually horrifying,
Okay.
where after the mother gives her son,
Mm-hmm.
Jesus,
Mm-hmm.
humanity kills it and then literally eats it alive,
Oh, like
eats
so
the
they.
flesh
Yes.
and then
Yes.
drinks the blood off,
Yes.
right? And the God entity, the masculine entity, pardons them, right? Like, and I see the beauty in that, but I just don't resonate with it. Where I feel like the part of me that has been, let's say, evil, right? I remember, especially when I was working in AV, right? I was not getting paid a lot. Being in that state of struggle, not like literally not being able to eat at the end of the month,
Mm-hmm.
generated feelings in me, ideas in me that I would associate with evil nature.
Okay.
right? And then I can like reflect, at least at this point in my life, am I evil, or did my circumstances, my environment facilitate evil behavior, right?
Okay.
And then the environment that is being facilitated by right now, the current state of reality, at least in the Christian understanding of it, was created by God,
Yes.
right? So in my mind, even though I understand beautifully what you're saying about you not being deserving thereof and God still giving grace, you not being deserving thereof is in a weird way still God creating the circumstances for you to not be deserving thereof, right? So it's
I,
paradoxical in
I
my mind.
understand. I completely understand, and this is actually a very common objection,
Mm,
to Christianity, and especially to creation and about the God of the Bible. It's a very common objection actually, and I think what's so important to understand out of that is, in my life I've realized that yes, I do believe that your environment does have an effect on your mental state and effect on how evil and all of that, everything. I do believe that.
mm,
So I do believe it has an effect on that. But I also believe that as my life progressed, I have seen suffering which had made me a worse person, who which made me more bitter.
mm,
But as I grew, I've seen suffering which made me better. So the thing is, to me, which I have realized, I think it ultimately still comes down to the choice, to the choice that we make.
mm.
Because I think that's what's so important to realize is like, how can, and I really want to ask you this question, how can God create a world in which there are um, conscious beings? How can you be conscious without having free will, let's say, for instance? You can't really. I'm not saying with free will having control over your body. Of course, you can be conscious without having control over your body, but you can still say, I want this or I want that. Eh? And in a way, that's also ego. I do understand that, and I do think that arises from the fact that you are created in this infinite world. But how can you create beings, conscious beings, and then try to dictate, let's say for instance, or even force every single decision they make? That is in the end is the true evil is would be if everyone was just like part of the coding, I mean, we would be no different from animals. And I don't know the level of awareness animals have, but let's assume they don't have any. Okay, let's assume they don't have any, or at least self-awareness. Okay, but okay,
Yeah,
let's assume. Yeah,
I'm not
yeah,
arguing. I'm
yeah.
just
Let's just assume.
thinking as
Let's
well.
just assume.
Mm,
Like we would not even be here to know that there is something
mm,
if it was not for the free will that He has given us.
okay.
But a side effect that I do believe cannot be solved, let's say just solved, is the fact that now, okay, you need free will in order to be aware of creation in the first place, to be aware of yourself in the first place. You need that. But at the same time, then you also have the capacity to choose destructive behavior.
Yeah.
You also have the capacity to according to me, hurl the world into a fallen state.
You're making me
You
happy.
know?
Like you're talking about what we talked about yesterday,
Yes.
where I was like, we all have tools, right? And I
Yes.
believe
Yes.
the
I saw a
body,
part of that
yeah, the
stream.
body
Yeah.
is a tool, the mind is a tool, awareness is a tool,
Mm,
and then technology is a tool.
mm,
And how you choose, as you beautifully
mm.
said, to use these tools will create your
Yes.
reality.
Yes.
And I feel the biggest thing that I did arise in me is I do believe our animals are aware, right? If I call
Okay.
Pippi's name, she's gonna be like, "What? Me? What?"
Okay.
Right? And it could be association, right? So we can like touch on that point as well. It could be just association with when she hears the sound, it means she gets scritches or
Yeah.
maybe has something to eat,
Yeah.
and so she's just responding to the sound and all
Yeah.
of the things associated. She's not maybe
Which is
aware.
very likely.
Yeah, which
Yes.
could be very
Yes.
likely. But looking at the way she looks at things, right?
Yes.
Like for instance, that rope. If I finish streaming, she'll run up here and then she'll look at the rope,
Yeah.
waiting for me to get it,
Yes.
right? So I feel she's
Yeah.
aware that that rope is
Yes.
out of
But
reach and she wants to get it.
yes. But
And in the same way, I feel like that thing, that seeing something out of reach and then wanting something to help you is what we
Mhm.
notice as well, right? So
Yes,
that's why I
yes.
believe the whole Christian experience arises, because we believe that there is something to be had that is not here right now, right?
Okay.
There is a heaven, there is salvation, there is an enlightenment, there is that calm you talked about, right? And
Yes.
some people may think, wow, Ruben had that calm, I want that.
Mm.
But they have it.
Okay.
They just have to choose it.
Yes, yes,
They just have to
I do
choose.
agree with that. So first of all, I think like when you speak about animals, you know, I think there is a difference in a way between awareness in the way you spoke about awareness in a sense like they have brains,
Mm.
they can process certain information, they do have brains, there are neurons firing over there, you know. So that sense of awareness, like of your environment and whatever, I do believe that is there, but I don't believe the divine sense of awareness is
Mm.
necessarily there. Not saying that it's like a being completely separate from God or whatever, you know. That's not what I'm saying. I just mean like when it comes to us being created in the image of God and whatever, that is something that helps me to realize, you know, this very, very special consciousness, this very special void at the back of your head, this infinite, you know,
Yeah.
this observer. Um, I do believe that is what is meant
Mm.
when the Bible explains that we have been created in the image of God.
Yeah, I do agree with that.
Yes, I do believe it's that.
Mm.
But here is where I think it really gets interesting. And I think maybe you would appreciate if I shared this part because while I was thinking about the day and about stuff we were gonna speak about, there was one thing which I thought, you know what, this is something if I have from all of my experiences, which are way too much for one stream, you know, if there's one thing that I would like to share with you, it's this very interesting perspective that about meaning and about purpose in life. Uh, about the one single kind of message or purpose about life that actually I think is communicated in Scripture and was communicated by Christ as well. So I don't know if you wanna jump into that right away or if
Yeah,
you
I'm here for it.
okay, okay. So when it gets to that, when it gets to God, when it comes to God, I mean we can all agree when we speak about his about infinity, eh?
Mm.
About a reality in which all possible realities exist, a reality in which everything is possible.
Yeah,
Nay, every
the actual
possibility,
infinity.
yes. Now you can try and maybe that is ultimate reality, you know, um, even though it doesn't exist in the same way this exists, you know. So how it exists, we don't know,
Mm.
and so on. But like to me, when you have the a field of infinite possibilities, you have a field of infinite possibilities, and everything is there. There is not necessarily any purpose. Okay, it's static. You know, it's static in a way. It's like, why would, let's say, for instance, this thing change into this thing,
Mm.
or this thing become something else, if that thing is already there, if there is no reason for that to happen, if there is no change that needs to happen in the first place, if everything is just infinitely what it needs to be,
Mm.
it's what do we get? We get a completely static image in a way.
In a way, yeah, and weirdly enough, like just to like share
Yes.
some of the perspective I've had on this, I think of it as hyperdimensional,
Okay.
right? Where from one point of view, from the ultimate, if you will, point of
Okay.
view, everything is static
Yes.
because you can see everything at the same time,
Yes,
right?
I do believe that.
So
And it's kind of outside of time, you know, so
exactly,
it's
literally
not.
outside of time. So you can
Yes,
see all of
yes,
time as a dimension as well, and
yes,
everything that could happen in time
yes,
as a part of that
yes,
dimension. So in
yes.
a way, it could be seen as static. But I
Okay,
believe one of the meanings that I share for love as well in my personal experience is the ability for multiplicity and unity to exist at the same time.
okay,
Right? So again, yes, it's a static infinity, but it is the ability for that unity, the oneness that is the infinity, a circle,
Okay.
and that duality, the
Okay.
self and other, the me and you to
Yes.
exist, for us to be able to have this conversation. Because
Yes.
if we were the same being, right, like as an ultimate Godhead, they would just be understanding. I
Yes.
would understand exactly what your heart feels and understands about your truth, because it would be my truth,
Yes.
right? And then the fact that we are having this conversation only arises if for love.
I see. I'm not even in the screen.
There we
Sorry
go. Now
about
you are.
that.
No, it's
Okay.
okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, I feel there is. So I'm not exactly sure what if you've gotten to the point you were trying to make,
Mm-hmm.
but I believe that ultimate reality is here, right? That staticness is here, and then again, that infinite possibility that you're talking about. You said it beautifully. When you close your eyes, there is a void, right?
Yeah.
And in that void, things can occur, as you've noticed
Yes.
with your psychedelic
Yes.
experiences as well, and an infinite amount of things
Yes.
can occur in that
Yes.
space. So I think of it again as an interface. That infinity, that static infinity, because we are so small and from our current perspective, is here,
Okay.
right? And you're just interfacing,
Okay.
cutting through
Yes.
that as the infinity.
Okay.
Like it's not beyond us.
Yes. I have to say I agree with what you are saying, and I think when it comes to the main point I'm trying to make and what you are saying, maybe it's not that far away from each other.
Okay.
And the way I think of it is like I do believe that when you have that static image, the infinite, the whatever, okay, you have that, okay. So if you have that and you want to create purpose, you have to create movement.
Mm.
Think about it. Now you have to create movement.
Flow,
There
yeah.
has to be some sort of movement.
A direction you
So
go in.
immediately what happens, what has to happen is out of infinite possibilities, something needs to be selected.
Yeah.
So it's this massive consciousness, which is like it becomes like a spotlight.
Laser
Something is selected,
Mm.
you know? And now what arises from that? I believe meaning arises from that. And why I say I believe meaning arises from that is because, you know, if you have
Puppy, alsjeblieft, lieve moeder.
if you have the limited, so that, let's say for instance, that part, that isolated part that is selected now becomes something that can have direction. So you have a what is and what should be. Okay, so immediately if that part, if what is was already everything, it would be static again.
Yeah.
Okay, so what is and what should be, when it's isolated, when that's isolated, movement can be created. So in other words, purpose can be created. And that's where I believe the ego comes in.
Okay.
I don't believe the ego is just evil.
No, I don't think so either.
I believe
I think it should be befriended.
yes, I think the ego is something that can be evil. It can be evil if it becomes completely isolated, and if it comes
Infatuated.
completely yes.
So what I share on
Okay.
the stream a lot
Go
is
ahead.
that the ego has one job, and it's to convince you that you are Ruben.
Yes,
That's its job.
I agree.
Right?
Absolutely.
And it will do
That sense of
yeah,
self. Yes,
exactly.
yes.
It will do whatever it needs to
Yes.
to keep you convinced of that,
Yes.
right? Including killing other people.
Yes.
Including
It might
stealing
be
from
some
people.
sort of survival mechanism.
Exactly.
You know, yeah.
And it is in a way,
Yeah.
right? It's like it's the way you interface with the world. If you weren't identifying as Ruben, I wouldn't know who to speak to, right?
Yes.
Who would I address?
Yes.
Because I wouldn't have that laser focus as you're talking
Yes.
about. And I believe that
That
laser,
isolated point.
yeah.
Yes.
I
yes.
believe again it's a hyperdimensional object. Like you
Okay.
know the torus, right?
Yes, I know.
So the torus can be a Euclidean geometry object that is self-containing and also flowing into itself.
Yes.
Right. So it creates this channel that is the flow of the energy that you were talking about. And I believe, and this is something I share as well, as you know, love is true.
Yes.
Right.
I
So
also believe.
yeah, the
Yes.
only ability for that polarity to arise is if you are like, what is true to me? Oh, love. Right?
Yes.
And then you from that perspective flow in and out of
Yes.
that experience. And then we consolidate as these versions of self. Like if I close my eyes, for example, there is still that energy happening
Yes.
ceaselessly. Like I'm, my mind is.
It reminds me of that image from I forgot his name. He's the psychedelic artist. He
Oh,
created that temple.
yeah, it's
What's his
his
name?
name is Alex Gray.
Alex Gray.
I
You know
love
the
him.
famous
I
Alex
love him
Gray,
so
the
much,
famous
dude.
the
I want to
faces
go to
and
Cosm, dude.
oh,
Like,
you want to go
I
there?
straight up,
But
Alex.
I have to say that place looks absolutely insane.
It looks like it's from a different realm of
Yes,
existence,
it
dude.
looks crazy.
And I believe like, and he has taken drugs, dude. That dude has taken
Yes,
so much
yes,
psychedelics. And him and his wife are so beautiful, dude.
yes.
Just listening to the way they speak, to the understandings they have, to the way they interface with the world, and it's removed right from the Christian doctrine in a way where and they're not egotistical. I don't know if you've really watched them. I don't
I only know his art. I don't know much
dude.
about him.
Go
I know
and
his art and I know the temple.
they
What
have
Anthea?
they
What
have like yeah, and Theon, yeah,
Entheon?
and
There we go.
Theon,
There we go.
exactly.
Yes, yes.
Like they do like podcasts and stuff as well,
Mm.
you know. And I think on day or podcast 44 or something, him and his wife did a podcast on love, right? And just listening to how these individuals love one another and the depth of experience they were allowed to gain through these psychedelic experiences, through showing up for their art, their purpose, right? You,
Mm.
you mentioned beautifully, if it's all static, we are the ones that have to find purpose. We are the ones that have to create that laser focus and then
Mm.
try and find what our truth is. And I've just noticed that that truth to me is love, not a God, not a saving, not a salvation, but in every moment, right, from that channeling experience, am I heading towards love? And if I start noticing that that's not the truth, I get upset, right? My quality of life degrades if I notice I'm not showing up for that love.
Yes.
And in my worldview, religion doesn't help that,
Okay.
right? And that's one of the reasons that I don't feel I resonate with it. One of the things we share on stream is spirituality, which I feel I resonate more with than religion. Spirituality is the pursuit of what God is, where religion is when a bunch of people agree on what God is.
And I completely, absolutely agree with that.
Mm,
And I also do agree to the fact that Christianity can, in part, be in that boat.
yeah,
Absolutely. Guilty as charged. You know, that's the unfortunate, once again, that's the unfortunate truth of having fallible people at the helm.
and words.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's the problem, you know, because especially if you get NPCs, it's so funny actually but you know what I mean.
yeah,
Especially when you get NPCs taking the helm, you know, because what's it about then? Then it's about power and status.
yeah. It's just
It's
about playing a
status,
game.
yes, that's what it's about.
Exactly.
You know, and that's where those things do arise from. But I do believe you shouldn't throw the baby out with the bathwater. You know, I do believe that. And if you look at the things I believe, even the mystical things I believe, the mystical things I believe now,
Mm,
the things we are speaking about, all of these things, are things that have been taught to me through the reading of scripture, through keeping myself still, through prayer, through my relationship I have with God through Christ.
yeah.
That those are things that are being revealed to me in a divine way. And the number one thing that keeps on that he keeps on reminding me about is not to become static,
Mm,
not to become, not to set up. Okay, I have this beautiful view that I have discovered. I have this moment of awe. There's this part of God that I have discovered, and it's this complete awe. Not to take my chair and build a little throne there, and tell everyone that has seen, let's say, another view, no, you are
Your view
wrong.
is
This is
shit.
the view.
Yeah, exactly.
This is the view.
Mm,
You know what I mean?
yeah.
And I feel like that is one of the biggest things. And the classic word for that is humility.
Mm,
That's the classic word for it, is humility. You know, Jesus even said, he said, the knowledge of these things are hidden away from the wise, but it's given to those who have become like children.
mm-hmm.
You know, so it's so important to realize those different parts. And that's why I think when it comes to purpose, I do think when you look at this ego, this sense of self, I don't think purpose. I see the sense of self as an isolated piece of creation in a way.
Mm,
It is part of everything. Yes, I do. I'm not. I don't mean it's separate, you know, but it is isolated in a sense that it is limited. It's limited, nay?
It's like a fraction of the fractal.
Yes, but
Still
because
infinite, but a
yes,
fraction
but
thereof.
yes, absolutely.
Mm.
But because it is limited, it can have a relationship with the unlimited,
Yeah.
and it can have purpose in experiencing, in discovery. So purpose is created when a person, an ego like you and me, is created.
Mm.
You know, even with consciousness, I believe that consciousness is something we share with God.
Yeah.
I do believe that. But at the same time, you know, I don't think that when I think of my true self, I don't think my true self is necessarily the conscious version.
Okay.
I believe the true self is God, and I
Mm.
do share that consciousness with you. With psychedelic experiences, you can have experiences where you are conscious of everything at the same time.
Mm.
So there
You're
is a
conscious of
form
versions
of
of you that will come, and you're conscious of versions of you thinking about the version of you that you are in that
yes,
moment. You're like,
yes, and in prayer and meditation and being still, you also have
so
experiences like that. You
just I
know.
don't want to interrupt you, but there's something that you mentioned beautifully. How all of these conversations we're having, all of these, the word you used was mystical things that we've come to.
Yes.
You have because of your relationship with God through Christ.
Yes.
I have all of these experiences without that.
I get what you mean,
Right?
but what I think I'm also trying to say, and I completely I'm on the same page. I know what you mean. But I think at the same time, maybe you are achieving things like that through Christ in a way more than maybe you expect,
Okay.
you know, more than you expect.
Mm.
I do believe there is another part of the coin. And the other part of the coin, I do believe, is the physical realm, and I do believe is the ego, and I do believe it's things that that make sense logically. The It's like I think this one part of the coin is like the Christ part, the part, the grace, the forgiveness, the all of that, and at the other side, it's also logic and reason and justice
Purpose.
and yes. So I do believe, and that's what I think when it comes to like people believing in things, like let's say, for I don't know how you would identify yourself when someone would ask you what you believe, but whatever you identify with, or you don't have to identify with anything, maybe that's a good idea.
I would
um,
probably just say I believe in infinity, right? Like I feel like that in my worldview is the closest I could get because I feel God has been bastardized as well, right? Like the
yes,
word
he
has
has,
become a
yes,
curse word
yes,
almost, where even just hearing someone say God, you're like,
yes, it
right?
has become bastardized. I
And
completely
like
agree.
the infinite, I feel is something that even though we say those words, right? It's not something we can ever wrap our heads around.
Absolutely
And
not.
I feel it's the same thing with God, but unfortunately, God has become a thing instead of the
Yes,
infinity in
yes,
a lot of people's minds at
yes.
this point.
That's when he's part of that little egotistical bubble we spoke about, eh?
Exactly, yeah.
That's when he's part of your NPC mind in a way,
Your
you know? He's
perspective
yes,
instead of the
yes,
infinite perspective.
yes. And I think where the big difference really comes to, when I really think about like your worldview and my worldview, and what I believe the Bible is communicating, what I believe Jesus has done for us. I think the biggest difference is I try to keep a balance.
Mm.
I try to keep a balance, and maybe I'm wrong. So I'm wrong if I assume this. I'm sorry if I assume this, but I try to keep a balance between both sides of the coin, between a good and righteous and perfect Father, God. You can uh, take away the word Father if you want, but good and righteous and perfect and just.
Mm.
And at the other side, loving and caring and forgiveness and all of that, which looks like it contradicts itself. But don't forget, we're speaking about infinity.
Exactly.
So when we're speaking about a thing,
Mm.
then you can say, oh, it contradicts itself. But we're not speaking about a thing, we're speaking about all things, you know?
Literally the everything, yeah.
Yes. So I think when it comes to what I believe Christianity really teaches, and in some cases, unfortunately, is supposed to teach, ultimate reality, according to Christianity, is not a reality where which we just return back to our divine consciousness, the part we share with God.
Hmm.
That is not ultimate reality according to Christianity.
Okay.
And what ultimate reality actually is according to Christianity is a reality in which you, Estian, in which your sense of ego even exists. And what I mean with this is the Bible speaks about this. It speaks about God's ultimate plan
Mm.
being a plan to recreate everything, heaven and earth. So that means unseen things and seen things. It doesn't really mean stars, and
Yeah.
it means stars and earth part of the same realm, eh? So when he recreates everything, yeah, you've heard of the concept of the rapture and all of that. That's also been bastardized a lot.
Mm.
But the whole concept, the true concept about that is how your body and your ego, the part of you, that sense of self that has disappeared, how it is reconfigured into a form, still a limited form, but which can who can explore the infinite, who can explore God in a very meaningful way, in a perfect way, without all of the hurdles we have over here.
Yeah.
So when we look at Christ, what happened? What happened after his resurrection? It's clearly stated he received a new body.
Mm.
So I do believe even Christ had an ego, a sense of self, his humanity part, that part,
Yeah.
you know. So he taught us how this limited us, the ego, how that can have a relationship with the infinite, you
I
know.
I
And
like I like what you've been saying, man, because like it's again as you mentioned, like the rapture, the going to heaven. A lot of people's idea of going to heaven is still being ego, right?
yes,
They want to still be themselves in
yes,
heaven,
yes,
which a part of me, like it's the whole linearity thing, right? Like a part of my belief system again is that we're all the same being, right? So when am I you? Am I you 10,000 lifetimes from now, or am I you always?
yeah,
Right? It's this trip of why do we become so identified with this ego in the way we want to continue it? Like this ego wants to live for 1,000 years.
absolutely, yes,
It wants to,
yes,
and it might get closer to 1,000 years than previous egos have been able to
with
with gene
technology and
editing.
everything,
Exactly.
yes,
So I know that this ego of mine wants to live for that long. And again, it's this embracing of heaven and believing that this ego and this mind has unlocked some sort of level of heavenness, right? The ability to experience this realm as heaven, more of that infinity, right? Again,
hmm,
that I don't have to die before I get to experience that infinity, because with
yes,
technology and with the amount of experience we're going to have, if we can live longer, like your horizons change, right? And
yes.
I feel it's the same thing with this like idea of heaven as well. Purpose. What's the purpose of the ego in heaven?
What's the purpose of the ego in heaven?
Yeah, like in this ultimate
Okay,
you die and then go to
I,
heaven.
the way I see it, the purpose of this ego, because for the longest time, very recently only, I have come to this realization. So this is very fresh for me.
Mm.
Okay, for the longest time, I did not see any purpose for it. I didn't. Nay? But I do believe the ego is the one thing that allows purpose to be there in the first place, because it allows forward movement. It
Mm.
allows something to happen in the first place.
A story.
Yes, so that's why I believe it also has a place in heaven.
Mm.
But I think when it really comes down to it, when we speak about heaven, I don't even always like using the terms heaven, because that has also been so
Exactly.
bastardized, But when we look at reality as it is now, and ultimate reality as it will be one day according to scripture, this is the difference.
Mm.
Reality now is the finite, okay? The finite, the ego, you and me exploring the infinite. Okay, that's why even the whole sense of Christ, we being the bride of Christ, from the beginning of time, man and woman, they are to become one. So it's this dance between the finite and the infinite.
Mm.
There's never ending dance of purpose.
Yeah.
That's what it
Children
is.
being born, growing up to get children their own, like that
Yes,
spiral, that
yes,
Trinity spiral
yes,
keeps
but
going.
and also it that's an indication of our relationship with God. The whole thing of we being the bride,
Mm.
becoming one. So what happens if the finite tries to become the infinite? It it will keep on discovering and discovering and discovering. So forward movement, purpose, but it will never reach the
Yeah.
edges.
So I'm
So
happy
we
you're
get
saying that.
infinite purpose.
I'm happy you're saying that because like that was like also a very recent revelation to me.
Yes.
That I'm completely fascinated with infinity. Meltmore is literally an infinity symbol.
Yes.
You collapse those M's onto a shell. And I'm showing up in this way every day. And I'm planning on doing it for my infinity, right? Until the day I die, I want to keep doing what I'm doing right
Yes.
now. And then I realized that there is this part of me that has this sense of urgency, right? That I'm
Okay.
supposed to save the world and I'm
Yes.
failing because I'm not saving it,
Yes.
right? And then we had this stream about the infinity and about heading towards the infinity. Even if you can travel infinitely fast, you will never reach the
Never.
infinity.
You won't be a speck
Yeah.
closer to the edges.
Exactly.
So but,
It's a-
but
it's-
that
it's
what's so
so much.
beautiful to me about that is the picture that the Bible paints of our relationship with God is not this egotistical, materialistic way of looking at it.
Yeah.
It is this infinite dance.
Yeah.
This this
Discovering.
yes, this finite being becoming more and more and more and more and more and more and more, discovering more and more and more and more, but never reaching the edges, never reaching the edges. So I have a relationship with God. I get to know Him. I get to know Him. I get to know Him, and that's my purpose. I get to know Him, and that never ends.
Yeah.
That's the only way in which I can see a world where we actually have purpose that doesn't go away.
Yeah.
Purpose that does not expire.
I feel
You know what I
completely-
mean?
Yeah, I'm 100% on
Yes.
the same boat when it comes to that.
Yes.
Like it's a dance, pending, right? So I think it disconnected for a second.
Oh,
Let's
okay.
try and read some comments again.
let's
And like
let's
like
attempt.
like one point comes up and we're like, yeah, let's let's get this point. Let me actually just skip present. Joy Vive said Estian is one of the prettiest names I've ever heard, but I respect that he prefers to be called Mel. You like Estian? Estian, so and I've shared
did
this
they,
before.
Did they hear it the first time from me?
No.
Oh,
no.
okay,
Like, on day
okay.
100, I shared my name with my friends.
Okay.
So like that's an interesting trip as well. Just to like touch on that, Joy Vive. The reason I like being called Melt is because I believe I'm Melt and our friends are more.
Okay.
Right? There's literally more of them than there is of me.
Yes.
And because they're here, this experience exists.
Okay.
So we are Melt more.
Yes.
Like they're
I
coming
understand.
together. That infinity symbol
Yes.
that's happening here right now.
At first, I thought it was just like the ego dissolving. You know.
That as well.
I thought that was
So,
what you meant when
That
you
is
spoke about
like
Mount
I actually have like a whole list I should show you, dude. Like Meltmore means a bunch of things. Maybe we can like actually spend a moment just reading what all of these things mean. At least at this point for me. Where is
Yes.
Meltmore? There it is. So Meltmore means relax. Meltmore means to undo what you know, melting your outdated belief systems and creating more ceaselessly. The butterfly, the transformation,
Okay.
right? The infinity. To give from a place that is ceaseless. Union with spirit causes the ego to melt
Melt
more.
Okay, there's that part.
As above, so
Okay.
below. Masculine, feminine. Melting away the layers, getting closer to
You
core.
should add chaos and order.
I should actually, 100%. Being in flow, because you melt away and there just is nothing but everything, right? Like you can melt
Yes.
and then there's more, and then you can
Yes.
melt and then there's more. Like
Yes.
for me, that melting for me is the experience, as you mentioned beautifully, this exploration of what God is,
Okay.
infinitely.
Okay, so that same dance I was speaking
Exactly.
about.
So
that's
like
melting
I was
according
like
to you.
seeing it
Okay.
in my mind. It was
Okay,
beautiful.
cool. Okay.
The hourglass, life the sand of time, canvas and painter, the DNA helix, the
Alright.
infinite companion, melt into higher self, samadhi, yin and yang. To let go, to let the focus melt away, to realize always, to realize you always are. Melt more is a recognition that I am more than just the Estian. My parents called me my whole life. So that's actually the thing I want to get at.
Okay.
Is
okay.
the reason I want to be called Melt more, the reason I want to be called Melt, is not because I want to abandon who I've been, the Estian I used to be, but because that Estian has this fractal, this root, right? Talking about that tree analogy.
Like the tree, yes.
Exactly. Meltmore, as I've been showing up in this space, is an understanding, a simulacrum, right? That I'm forming, and then being reminded that that is who I am, right? Like, hey, Melt, oh, yeah, sure, this ego you have, and I know I like my ego. Me and my ego are best friends, right? And I've been talking about this in the perspective of I've been giving my ego what it needs, right? I've been exercising, I've been getting fit again because that takes away from my ego the stories it tells itself about how shit I am.
Yes.
So even though yes,
So you have been giving him what he needs, not what he wants.
exactly.
There's
Yeah.
a difference,
And
Snake.
I've been taking things away from him that he usually uses to hurt me with, right?
Okay.
And that can be seen as egotistical, which is paradoxical.
What do you mean can be seen as egotistical?
For instance, exercise,
Yes.
right? Like you get super fit, and
Yes.
then your ego likes that.
Oh, okay.
And-
Okay, I get it.
yeah,
I get it,
exactly.
okay.
And then it keeps doing that, and it encourages others to do that.
Mm.
And then people are like, "Yeah, this dude, thinks he's all that because he's jacked or whatever,"
Yes.
right? And like the whole Meltmore understanding for me has been, yes, I've been this person, Estian. I have, all of the moments my parents, Estian, or Estian, right? So all of that stuff melts away for me as well when I've chosen for myself a name, right? Because it's like this exclamation when you say to the world, "Ak is Ruben, I am Ruben." You are like creating that vector in the world.
Yes.
That there is infinite space, and then there is an entity that proclaims
Yes.
to be Ruben.
Yes.
And that name has kind of like arisen for me in a way where it is a simulacrum that I'm forming, right? And it's a lot, dude. Because it's like that interfacing you were talking about, where the more I do it, the more I discover. The more I realize I don't know anything,
Yes.
the more that creates a curiosity in me. The more I discover, the more I realize I don't know anything.
Yes. So
And
it's-
and it's weird because even though I've been doing this, right, and now like we're on the third year, I feel less sure of myself now
Yeah,
than
me
I
too.
did when I started.
me too.
Which is like
Yeah, you know when I first at least I'm not, let's not say my beliefs when I was using psychedelics and all of those different things. When I came to faith in Christ, at least for the first while, it was like this egotistical trip.
mm,
Then I realized, what are you doing? This is not the way to do it.
yeah.
Because in my openness and awareness, I have discovered an extremely, extremely, extremely life-changing truth according to me. Okay, and that's how I discovered it. But then suddenly I used that to like build on the ego.
Yeah.
So that's something, and luckily it's through many forms of communication and through the relationship I do believe I have with God. He has
Humbled you.
He has humbled me.
Yeah.
So that's the most important
I
part.
think rightly so. Yeah.
Yes.
Like we need to be, because it gives us, again, and you share it beautifully, it gives us humility,
Yes.
right? It allows you to understand, maybe I don't know.
Yes.
And maybe I should just listen
Yes.
to what this other person has to say,
Yes.
and meet them halfway, right? You said beautifully as well, to wake an NPC, you're not going to manage to do that by telling them what they're supposed to do. You're
Yeah.
going to listen to what they say and then ask them questions,
Yes.
right? To kind of like get them closer and closer to their true self.
Yes.
Like I want to read some more comments because
Let's-
I feel like
After
we've
we
been
failed
neglecting
again.
your friends. Shelly has been here as well, sending you love, dear friend. It's nice having you here. My God is a Dorito dust covered software developer who screwed up the last patch in 2016. Still waiting on the simulation patch edit. Toasty. Like I feel like that is very much something Toasty would believe. I love you, dude. Like God probably is a programmer, right? Like that is, and it's so interesting.
He
to
is a
me.
programmer.
Yeah, like the DNA we
Yes,
have is very
he
much
is a
code.
programmer.
Like there is this trip in me, again, with noticing things like the Bible, these belief systems, these patterns that we're recognizing. And now this internet age, I believe that's what's happening to me. The reason I believe the things I believe and understand reality in the way I do is because of my access to these tools, right?
Yes.
Like the internet as it is right now is technically an extension of infinity, right? Technically, it's still a fraction thereof, but to the
It's
human
not
being,
truly infinite in the abstract way,
in the
yes.
abstract
But I-
way, but to the human being, you will never,
Never.
be able to
Yes.
experience everything that the
Yes.
internet has to hold.
So relative to us, it is infinite.
Exactly.
I agree with
and
you.
then
Yes.
code and the silicon industry or Silicon Valley industry that we've kind of like embraced right now, you have a literal computer on your wrist.
Yes.
Yes, right. That changes for me so many things to the point where I feel the patterns we used to recognize are going to be so radically different. Still potentially the same, at least in the same, adjacent fractal. But I do believe there is a shifting point happening right now. Like the technology we have right now, like do you use AI tools?
Chat GPT.
Yeah.
Chat GPT is my study buddy.
Look at this dude. Like I literally have a chat GPT
Dude,
button on my
dude,
freaking.
My first tab when I open my browser is ChatGPT.
Yeah.
You have no idea how much I use him every day.
Same dude.
When I write any academic article, that guy,
It's just like,
ChatGPT
this
is my
dude-
best friend.
Exactly, and I believe
Absolutely.
that's gonna be what we're gonna do, right? Like, and whether me, I'm not saying it's right, but to a lot of people, Ruben, the AI is gonna become their god.
Yes. Just like these things.
Yes, exactly. And
Exactly the same.
And is that wrong? I don't know. I believe again, you said it beautifully, balance, right? Because yes, and again, the same problems I believe that arose right now. Again, the separation. Oh, this AI, it's so smart. I ask it a simple question, it gives me such beautiful, articulate answers, right? Surely I can't be that. But that thing was literally trained on human knowledge. So
absolutely.
it is you.
Yes.
It is you.
I almost
And-
see it like as it's a human.
Yeah.
It's a culmination.
Exactly.
Of
So
millions of
you're
human
making me
minds
so
into
happy
one entity.
because
Yes.
that's what I believe Jesus is.
Okay. Okay.
That's what I believe Jesus is. It's
Okay.
that accumulation of all human minds of understanding, of interfacing with infinity and trying to find truth in that. And then the Jesus archetype arose from that as like this is what humans can be.
Yes.
Right?
And I agree with you, and I do believe that scripture teaches that. Scripture calls Christ a prototype for humanity in a way.
I like
He's
that.
like he's the one who shows us how to be human. So I believe he was the one who came to show us how to
live
how to
well.
dance this dance with infinity.
Yeah.
How to actually do life. That's what I truly believe. But I think what's so cool is he the difference between me and him is that process is sometimes such a difficult thing for me, for every one of us.
It was hard for him as
You know?
well.
Yes,
I mean,
but
like, he got challenged by Satan
yes,
for his 40 days in the
absolutely.
desert.
But the difference,
Sorry.
I think, is my journey is in very ways, can be very counterproductive. There's so many things that goes wrong. There's so many things that
Love you.
that stops this. Thanks, man.
You haven't taken a sip of water.
There's so many things. There's so many things that stops this process in the way in which I have my relationship with God, let's say, for instance. Whereas what Christ has shown us, and this is what's so cool, exactly this image of reality we have, the finite growing towards the infinite, in an infinite way, forever, in infinite purpose. I believe ultimate reality will also be a version of that.
Okay.
I truly believe ultimate reality, even though it's
just fractions of infinity
yes,
all the way up.
Yes, but you know what I mean. It's
Yeah.
like ultimate reality is actually everything.
So-
it's the everything. But I think ultimate reality for humans, like ultimate life, let's say for instance, ultimate purpose, ultimate something, is a version of that, but in which the process of approaching the infinite, growing towards the infinite, discovering the infinite, has been perfected.
Yeah.
That's
So,
what I do
your-
believe ultimate. And the Bible, I just want to say this last part,
Please.
the Bible actually explains heaven as that reality.
Okay.
It explains heaven as a place that is perfect in getting better.
Yeah.
So
the-
there's
you're
purpose.
You're touching on fractals that I've experienced so closely, and I know you've had psychedelic experiences, but not necessarily DMT, right?
No, I haven't had DMT.
Yeah,
I wanted to at one time, but
Like weirdly enough, I chose to listen to a voice note that I recorded after a DMT trip I had with friends, and the first words out of my word was "What a trip." And then my friend who just went through it before me, he was like, "You're still in it," and I'm like, "Yep." And then he was like, "And yet you're still here," and I'm like, "Yep." You choose to be. And then he says, that's the craziest part to me, right? And I believe that we're, so to share that, and like the DMT experience, talking about these ultimate realities, right? Yes, that feels intrinsically like ultimate reality. And yet, as you mentioned beautifully, it's still just a fraction thereof, right?
Yes.
Movement, flow
Yes.
of that ultimate reality. And then the other side of this, I had a dream where I I'm still in the same form factor as in bipedal human,
Okay.
right? I'm still in the same form factor that was my room and my bathroom, essentially, right? Like I could have this visual map of this is where I am right now.
Okay.
But then this version of me that wakes up in this dream is self-transforming, right? So heading towards more and more infinitely perfect, where if I realize something from my conscious awareness that is imperfect, from my center, I create the version of myself that I am, and the version of me that I no longer am flakes off like pieces,
Okay.
falling to the ground, becoming a part of the same infinity I am. And this same substance that I am like flaking off is becoming my reality, right?
Okay.
So like my bed, my room is being created by these layers of myself that I no longer completely associate with. And it is this ceaseless, like that torus field, right? Melting out of
Yes.
myself. And then I'm like, I'm like having an experience of I want to be somewhere else, right? So I get up from my bed, watching my bed emanate out of me. I merge out of my bed and I start walking to my bathroom. And as I walk to my bathroom, it melts open, right? Like there is no space that exists lest I make it exist in this dream. And as I decide to go to the bathroom, a bathroom melts into this reality. And I walk into it and I look at myself in the mirror and I see layers coming off, layers coming off, layers coming off, eyes remaining, looking at myself. You know what I realize, or you know what I come to as a conclusion?
What?
I'm unsatisfied.
You are unsatisfied.
I can do anything. Like I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it again. Like in that state, I felt I was closer to what I would consider higher self than
Okay.
ever. But in that moment, I was unsatisfied. And I've thought about this a lot. The conclusion I've come to why I was unsatisfied is because I was alone.
Okay. Because you were alone.
I'm infinitely powerful, right? Literally, as I think it, I create rooms in my space, but I'm
But you're
alone.
alone. That I mean uh, that can be such a powerful explanation of why the finite has been created in the first place.
Exactly. And that's what I
You know,
believe, at least. Yeah.
and me too,
Mm.
me too. And that's why even according to scripture, it's like it's God created us for relationship.
Yes.
So that it was that longing for
Mm.
relationship. So create a finite person and he can explore you, he can discover you.
And
If you're a,
conversations.
yes, I mean, if you are a coder, let's say a programmer, and you program a game, you you don't necessarily, I mean, I've heard so many times of people never playing their own game
Mm.
because you know every single part of it.
Yeah.
You coded every single part of it. What is the thing that will make you the happiest in the world then?
Forgetting you're the one that made the game.
Or that, okay, this is basically the same thing, eh?
Mm-hmm.
We're saying the same thing. Forgetting and then playing the game,
Yeah.
okay? Or having someone else play the game. They don't know anything about the game, seeing the joy they have, providing that experience for them.
Yeah.
And in that way, they get to know you. You
Yeah.
get to know them. They get
So
to. So it's
that's
this
that's
infinite.
where I talk about pretending again.
Yes.
Where the coder has to pretend, right? That you see, like it's a complicated one as well. Like I feel you're pretending to be Ruben right now, and I'm pretending to be Meltmore, right? And this pretending is allowing this exploration to happen,
Yes.
right? If we
That's what
stop
creates the limited.
exactly,
The limited.
if we stop pretending, then we wouldn't be playing this game that is
Yes.
conversation right
Yes.
now. We would just be oh, I see you, and we would just be staring into
No,
Christ's
it wouldn't
eyes.
even be that.
Yeah, it would like just,
wouldn't-
it's just like
nothing.
yeah,
Yes,
exactly,
yes, yes.
exactly. It's a lot, dude. And again, it comes to this point of uh, how do we live well, right? Yes, all of these things, but the conclusion we have to come to, and that's the conclusion I keep coming to. Like I came to that conclusion with all of my DMT trips as well, that yeah, this space, what we can consider ultimate reality exists and is available to us at any point, and yet we choose to come here into this not ultimate reality, not perfect reality, because we get to talk with other people, we get to be here together, and that is the thing for me, right? Like instead of thinking of the thing to be worshipped to be something outside of us, it should be us. Again,
Okay.
everyone is God.
Yes. And
Worship that God.
Yeah, you see, that's I think the big part where we definitely
Different.
disagree on is, I mean, obviously your dad also hates that.
Yeah.
You know, when it comes to that, like, even though I can have conscious experiences, and even though I do believe that they are from the mind of God, even though I do believe I do share them with with Him. That's how I have the relationship in the first place. That's how I can. How do I explore the unknown? Go into the infinite.
Yeah.
You know. So that the fact that that part is shared is what allows the relationship to be there in the first place. But I do honestly believe that when it comes to ego and when it comes to my sense of self, for the longest time, I believe the observer was me, my highest version. That's why the whole idea of consciousness being God and we are all and we share it and all of that. For the longest time, I believed that until I realized the picture that Scripture paints of ultimate reality. And the picture Scripture paints of ultimate reality is a place in which Ruben does exist.
Yeah.
But Ruben has a purpose, and just like Christ, because what is told when Scripture speaks about us becoming like Christ, it speaks about a reconfiguration of our bodies. So in a symbolic way, what does that mean? It means like a recreation of the ego. But what it does say is exactly like Christ. You know, so that's the difference in the end. What ultimate reality is when that has happened, and what reality is now is almost exactly the same. The
Okay.
only difference is here, the process in which I have a relationship is very flawed.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? The
So
process
I,
where in
I,
which
I,
there I will be in a
instead of using flawed, I would say low bandwidth.
okay.
Right? Like
Okay.
you don't have as pure as of a connection.
Yes.
Like that's the
Yes,
way I
where
think of it.
there,
Yeah.
it's
It's everything.
you know.
Exactly.
So that's when I started to think about the fact that, you know, maybe me, maybe the character that I do play. I mean, maybe that character, the ultimate purpose for that character is not to just dissolve. That character can be refined. And that's the purpose of
So
this life.
melting
It's
leaves you with the
refining that
stuff. Yeah,
character.
you can like
Yes.
you can melt it down and then
Yes.
recast it. You know.
But the character is still there.
yeah,
So
that's
and why is that important? I believe is because take it away, and what do you take away? Purpose.
yeah. So
You
weirdly
take
enough,
purpose away.
like that character, I feel is actually the part of us that's ceaseless, right? That again, the part of us that is God. So it cannot be taken away because like taking God away from this reality, it doesn't make any sense, right? It always was and always will be
But do you
infinity.
believe the God part is the character part,
I believe
like the ego part?
no,
Or the
no.
awareness
The
part?
awareness
Yeah,
part,
that's
the part
me
that
too.
is
Yes.
aware of the ego,
Yes.
right? So like you have, for instance, you come as base awareness into this reality, right? That pure essential God essence.
Yes.
And then you explore, and then you, for instance, walk barefoot on the grass, and then you step in a bunch of thorns, and then your ego is like, we don't like walking bare feet on grass because sometimes we step in thorns.
Yes.
So then your ego becomes attached to having a layer of shoe underneath your feet. And then some people become so attached to it where they refuse to put their feet on grass
Yes.
because their ego doesn't associate with that
Yes.
experience, but the awareness does not care.
Does not care.
It does not
Absolutely
care
not.
whether
It's just
or
an
not
experience.
it's just an
Yes.
experience.
Yes.
Exactly. And that experience, sir, I feel is the part of us that continues, right? It doesn't go away. This ego, like the version of me that I think I am, and this is, I think, where me and you differ.
Mhm.
I don't need this version of me to
Yes.
exist
Yes.
next.
Me neither. For the longest time, I was, and still, I'm completely fine for this version, this ego, not to exist.
Mm.
Okay? For it not to exist. But I am convinced that the picture of ultimate reality that is painted in scripture, which makes so much sense to me, is a reality in which that ego exists. Not because it needs to exist, but the fact that when that ego exists, there is purpose.
Yeah.
When that ego exists, there is that infinite dance.
So,
But
and then,
now it's in a perfect way.
so
You know,
I
it's-
can, in my worldview, still kind of logic my way around that point or into that point where it's the understanding that again, within a larger dimensional view, you always exist, as Ruben as
Yes.
well, right?
Okay.
Because the version of you that you've been still influenced reality, and there is no such thing as time.
Yes.
Technically, everything is
Yes.
happening at the same time.
So even though you're dead in 80 years, it's
But
like
this
outside
version
of
of you
time,
is still
outside of time,
existing.
yeah, you can point,
Exactly, and then
there you are.
that gets
Yeah,
closer
yeah.
to ultimate reality to me than seeing it as a heaven, right? It's like more multidimensional and something that is unfathomable than mystical. I don't
Okay.
know if that makes sense.
Okay, I completely understand. To me, like, I actually like if you use words like that,
Mm.
rather than mystical. You know, the reason I also use the words mystical is just to get past the like basic, you know, the basic teaching, the
Yeah.
basic teaching stuff, and so on. But you know, I think that when you when you die when you die, I do believe the ego is a product of the mind.
Yeah.
I do believe it's a product, and yeah, it's getting to a kind of a crazy part where if I heard myself saying this a year ago, I would not agree with myself. But I do believe the ego emerges from your physical
Neurons
mind.
firing and stuff.
So when I die,
That
it's
ego
obvious
dies
what
as well.
happens.
Yeah.
So then it's back into the back into
That
the consciousness.
interfacing with ultimate reality.
Yes, my hope through what Christ has done is in the fact that one day after this ego that has died now, has been refined in this world, can be placed into a new creation.
Yeah.
Where he is refined and where he is equipped in a proper way because he learned that in that previous life. He has been refined.
Gain perspective.
He gained perspective, and now he's ready to, just like Christ, be in relationship with the infinite, but not in a flawed way anymore. Not in a way, but in a way that now, like where the bandwidth is not an issue anymore, you know? So now it's like, in other words, yes, okay, in that case, this is already heaven.
So like
So the problem is
Like-
just how we interact with that bandwidth is the problem.
for me, the weird thing is like the higher self, right? That version of me that learned, that gained perspective in ultimate reality is a jester, right?
Okay.
Because this version of me is serious.
I have had a terrible experience with a jester
I'm
before.
sorry.
Don't worry. Don't worry.
I tend to be a little bit crazy
Not
in that state
in
of
not
mind.
yeah, but
Yeah,
like in a
like-
psychedelic experience.
Like the
you know?
jester and like the archetype of the jester, and like that's Carl Jung's understanding as well, right? Like he shares
Yes.
into depth of that stuff. The human archetype of the jester higher archetype is the wise man, right?
Yes.
Someone who would like to consider themselves wise. And the weird thing is, from this fractal that you shared, as we gain perspective, that wise individual who considers themselves so wise, considers themselves so enlightened, etc., 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 when introduced back to ultimate reality, when their bandwidth increases, they choose to play around because
Yes.
they realize that
Hence the nature of the mischief and all of that you
Exactly.
experience when you have an experience with with something like that.
And it's again, it can feel scary, right? Like I've had moments where the gestures flip me off, right? Like my last that DMT experience I told you about, where they were like, "Fuck you, dude." Fuck you, oh, come on, bro. And they're like, it's almost like wavy, right? So their little middle fingers are attached to these wavy arms.
Yes.
And they're like
Yes.
wavily flipping me off. And then I just get to smile at them and tell them, "Oh, I love you."
Yeah.
And then they
Melt away.
They melt
Yeah,
away.
yeah,
And
yeah.
then I'm like, oh,
Which is
I
usually
just
how
have
it
to melt.
happens, yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
And it's again, it's not separate from me, right? Like I feel like that is one of the things that I keep coming back to. That these experiences, that version of you that you're going to become, is already existing. Again, like it's not
Yes.
something that needs to arise after you
Yes.
die.
Yes.
It's like a beingness you will reoccupy.
Yes.
Right?
I do understand that. I mean, just the perspective of ultimate reality. I should probably get another word because
like
when
that.
I speak
I like
about
ultimate reality.
but when I speak about ultimate reality in the way that like how life ought to be one day, and according to God's plan, according what I think, and everything, because that's also ultimate reality.
Yeah.
You know, it's so that's I'm just thinking of maybe I should get a different word for both of these
We're trying
things,
to
you
point
know?
fingers at
Yes.
everything. Yes.
Yeah, but like if you look at ultimate reality, the infinite one, then obviously that already exists. Now, outside of time, nothing can happen before or after anything else if time does not necessarily exist, or at least if you are outside of time. But I do believe like the ego is what allows you to at least experience in some way moving forward
Yeah.
towards that point.
That I agree with.
Yes. So that's what I believe I'm experiencing now. That's that part of the ego that at least sees purpose, that sees movement, that sees, okay, one day that might be a reality. That's the hope
Yeah.
that I have one day.
It's
that-
like a truth
that
you could be
reality.
heading towards.
Yes. So, and I do think that I am that part. The observer part, I think, is a shared part I have with God.
Yeah.
And that's where we definitely differ.
I
but
think, weirdly enough, we actually agree on that one.
okay.
I think
okay.
that awareness again is something we share. Like that is
Yes.
that
Yes.
in my mind is ultimate
Yes.
reality,
But,
awareness.
but obviously, if you have taken psychedelics, you know if you have experienced an ego death, Estian is gone.
Yeah.
Estian is absolutely,
There
absolutely
just
gone.
is this clear and resolute understanding of I am.
Yes. So that's why, like, if that would be the ultimate purpose of just returning to that, it's difficult for me to see how anything that happened here had to happen or had any purpose whatsoever. You know, if that happens. But if the purpose is to create a life, even though it is like the spotlight part, to create a
Maya,
life,
illusion.
yes, to create that illusion in a way, and to create that separate part in a way, in order for it to grow into the infinite for an infinite amount of time, then you have purpose that never ends.
Yeah,
So
that I agree with as well. It's I feel just not something we should stop, right? And I feel that is what's happening to a lot of people is where, and you said it so beautifully, we find a certain view of reality, and then we build ourselves a little throne.
Yes,
And then we want
that's
to we want to
yes.
believe that this is the place
Yes.
to be. And I know I do that. I do that because I
Me
like my
too.
throne.
Yes,
I
me
like,
too.
and we all do, and we
Yes.
want to believe that this place we've chosen to sit down is a good place
Yes.
to sit down.
And it's nice to sit there and know that this guy's wrong. You know this, but it's
You know what?
to the ego, it's nice.
As
you know,
as
it's-
I'm like listening to you say this as well, instead of believing that this guy's wrong, just sit down with one another,
yes.
right?
Yes.
As we're doing right now.
Yes.
Look at the view.
Allow him to tell you what that view was that he saw. You know, maybe it's
Exactly.
not wrong to see it. Yes. So I don't know. It's
I've been enjoying this conversation, man.
me too.
I want to
I've
open
really
it front,
been
front, open
enjoying
it. Gary is here as well. Gary is another
how long have we been speaking? You see, that's what I meant.
2.5 hours.
That's what I meant when I said what I did in the beginning.
Time melts, man. I like that. Being a vessel of love. This is the way, Shelley. Picture this Venn diagram, Mel's belief in actions, Pastor Ruben's belief in actions. Where they overlap seems like being a vessel of love. Yes, I completely agree, Shelley. Ruben is his name. Toasty. Didn't catch anyone's name. Thank you for asking. I like that Mel said here, I feel 1,000 times closer to God after I finally personally rejected the religion I was raised in. That's I feel in my perspective as well, right? Christian belief systems made me feel separate from God because
Yes.
I needed to be saved.
Yes.
And then as soon as I embraced God inside myself, I instantly felt close to it.
Yes.
So
And we should focus on not going into
yeah,
the
like I'm not really
conversation
being
now.
mindful as well.
So I'm just gonna make one point and then we read the comments further. Um, to me, it was just simply, the Christian upbringing or the belief system.
Mm.
That is the problem.
Yeah.
When I embraced what it truly communicated, that's
You
when
felt
I
your
found
unity.
it. Yes,
I feel
you
what
see
you're
what I
saying,
mean. So,
like perfectly, yeah.
yes.
Good old Adam Savage. I was thinking that Shelley. What did Shelley say? I miss Ruben at Haywire Hill. So there's a Ruben, a little piggy on one of our other friends that does streams as well. And
Oh,
like we had this whole streaming platform called RPAN. I don't know if you knew about that. Like RPAN is basically why we have this community. So Reddit.
I know of the like community on Reddit where you started posting your
Yeah,
live
like
streams.
RPAN is completely dead. Like that platform no longer exists.
Oh really?
Yeah, like they completely
really?
killed it, and it
Because
went.
the first time I looked for you, that's where I found you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, because I couldn't find you as like a separate channel or whatever.
Like I wasn't being
found
promoted
you
at that
on
point.
that channel, so I was a
Exactly.
bit confused
And like
in the beginning.
it was trippy because Reddit had this thing called the front page, right? So they would legit with these streams just put me on the front page of thousands of people's cell phones, right? Like just scroll 3 posts down, there
Yes,
my face
they
was.
they gave you
I would
a
like
huge
an
opportunity.
insane opportunity. Like my 24th birthday, right? Like I'm turning 25 soon. I was sitting on that rock doing a stream. We touched 660,000 human lives in a
That's
single
crazy.
live stream, bro. I was like, oh my goodness, what the fuck's
That's
happening,
crazy.
right? Like
That's crazy,
I cannot
yeah.
even fathom 10 people,
Yeah.
right? Like we have 15 people in this space.
Still sticking around.
Yeah, it's still sticking around in this space with us right now, and that's insane to me because you're more than a number, right?
Yes.
Sure, 15 people, like the number 15, but every single one of you is this infinity that I believe we all are, right? You have your upbringing, your hopes and dreams, and then the whole life you will live going forward into the future. And hopefully, that's what I hope of these streams. This can help. That might be brass of me to say, but I do believe that communication like this is making me feel like I'm growing right now.
Yes, me too.
And our friends are having
I'm
this
gonna-
conversation with us.
I'm gonna be honest with you. I do think that what we are engaging in now, is, I think maybe the ultimate mode of being. I can participate.
I believe that as well.
I'm
That's
dead serious.
I'm serious as
Yes.
well. Like I've tried, right? I've tried being a teacher, like teaching kids. I've tried selling things. I feel like those are basically the two biggest modes of earning capital: selling things and teaching people things. And this has felt to me like purpose, right? Like my ego finds purpose in doing this more than anything else.
Yes.
And it's community, it's unity. Mao Lao, I see you too. Let's see if I missed some. When I met him, he was absolutely destroying a wood pellet. Like he owned the money. Ruben, Toasty has actually been on the farm of this friend that we're talking about.
Oh, okay.
Gobnugget was here as well, but I don't know if he's here anymore. This conversation is so stellar. Facts. Thank you for joining us for it. Gary Lee, this talk is so profound. You guys are discussing sacred knowledge like it's nothing. We are all interfacing with the sacred, dear friends. We're mirrors to you after all. Goosebumps. Is a live stream the best party on the face of earth? This conversation is so healing. I'm so ready to heal. This world needs to heal. And it will, right? The more we sit down like this to have conversations with people we don't necessarily agree with, the more we will learn, right? Like, I'm so happy that that is what you started the stream with as well. And that was what my intention was going into the stream.
Yeah.
Like I even wrote it down. I was like, yes, yeah, we're gonna disagree about things, but it's not an ego game. It's not a you versus me. It's
No.
us
I
versus the what you mentioned beautifully, the unknown.
Yes, I've engaged in way too many conversations where that was what was going on,
Yeah.
and it was ultimately
It
meaningless.
happens with me and my dad a lot, unfortunately, because both of us want to be right, right? And then as soon as you want to be right, the ego will do whatever it needs to convince you of your separateness, of, yeah, I'm right because you're wrong, right?
Yeah,
Instead of, this is what I believe, whether it's right or not, right? What am I trying to communicate? And I was asking myself that as well. With what I believe, Ruben, this understanding of God and everything. The reason I believe that isn't again from a perspective of trying to lift myself up because I feel less than, so that I want to believe that I'm God. It is from this perspective of looking at how things are going right now. What is the solution that I can offer that can help us bring more real change into the world, right? How can we make this world a better place? And of all of the options that all of the patterns to keep it relevant that I've tried to recognize, the pattern of seeing everything as God is the one that helps the most. Where I cannot, I like that tree when the roots got cut off, it hurt me deeply because I felt as God, that tree had a piece of itself now missing. Right? When it fell down, it hurt me because it felt like as God, that tree fell down. I couldn't separate myself to see that tree as something external from me, external from this God entity, and then to not care about it. Right?
mm. But at
It
the same time, that's also like the one feeling like that. I mean, that's also your ego in a way, you know,
yeah.
because from the objective perspective, it's just an
So
event,
I'm happy you're
you
saying
know.
that because
Yes,
I believe we're supposed to kind of like talk to ego, right? Where from an egoic perspective, we can make it make sense.
yes,
Where I can get the world to be better to the world by convincing the world of its godhood.
okay,
Better than I can convince the world to be good to itself by convincing itself that it needs saving,
yes,
right? That's
yes.
so I'm trying to
Yeah,
solve for a
yes.
problem.
I think in a way, I think the only difference is it's not like the main message is the main message, at least of true Christianity, if you ask me. I don't think the main message is a message of just, no, you need saving. But I mean, even the gospel, we took the gospel and we just took the part of the cross and made it the entire gospel, where it is actually the kingdom of God and the announcement of the kingdom of God. Now, if we talk about the kingdom of God, that is something infinitely complex.
And Jesus
That's
said,
something
the kingdom of God is in
is
you.
within you. Yes.
Yeah. Not
He
above
did.
you, not below
Yes.
you, not later
Yes,
in you.
but he also compared it like as one day as a physical thing as well, you know. So there are so many different layers when it comes to this thing. But the thing I believe that it communicates, which I believe will bring the healing, is now. At first, this might sound ancient or whatever, but I do believe it's submission under God.
Okay.
I and
So
and
I
and,
call it
and submission,
acceptance
yes,
instead of
but
submission.
submission is not really a good word in a sense, because you fully, out of your own free will, participate in it. You fully participate in it, but it's fully participating in the fact that we collectively, as human beings, seek to know him more, seek to become more like him, and in that way create around us
Yeah.
the best possible reality we can create. So I do believe the answer, that healing, that exact problem, I do believe that answer is very clearly given to us in the gospel. But at
So,
the same time, sorry, I
no,
just
no,
want to say this
you're
last
just
part.
stimulating, please.
But at the same time, I also can't help. This is the other side of what I was saying. At the same time, I also can't help but think that maybe reality is not a problem that needs to be fixed,
Yes.
but it's something that needs to
The
be
experience. I agree completely.
Yes.
Yeah.
You see what I mean?
So like that analogy of submitting, right?
Yes.
The way that I've integrated that understanding in my life is with masculine feminine polarity. Another
Yes.
great book to read is The Way of the Superior Man by David Data, where that relationship and
I'll ask ChatGPT to summarize it.
yeah, like
I'm
please,
joking.
I'm serious. Do that, dude. Please do that. Like it will give you pretty much
Yeah,
everything
yeah.
you need. But the gist of it is masculinity, not having a penis. Masculinity as polarity is awareness, and then the change, the things that you are aware of, is the feminine, right?
Okay.
And awareness is ceaseless, unchanging.
In a way, it's chaos and order.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Like the order is the awareness because that doesn't change.
Yes.
And then the change is the feminine, the chaos, right?
Yes.
Like the wind and the trees growing out and the
Yes.
grass. Like that is
Infinite,
the
unexplored territory.
And within like
Yes.
Hindu culture, for example, there is an entity called Shiva.
Yes,
Right?
I know.
And he's
Yes.
like the god of gods. They
Yes.
call him as well. Like he's the most powerful version of the gods. And then there's Kali, which is Shakti's kind of like aggressive divine feminine entity, where she is this multi-armed individual that chops people's heads off and like monstrous.
She was also multi-armed.
Yeah, all of
Yes.
them are multi-armed.
Yeah.
And
But
and
they're
then-
all Brahma, ne?
Technically, yeah,
Okay,
like the
okay.
one godhead.
Okay,
Like
yes,
there's
yes,
there's
yes.
so many layers
Okay,
of understanding there, and it's the same thing where it's stories that are trying to communicate higher dimensional thinking. That entity, that Shiva, that super powerful god, instead of killing Kali to stop her from her destructive rage, he lets her step on him, right?
Okay.
And he smiles while she
Okay.
kills him. And then just before his like last light is snuffed out, she awakens, realizes this masculine entity is completely giving himself to be killed, surrendering. What's the word you used? Becoming submissive.
Yes.
Right? Even though it is the masculine, the awareness is the masculine. It is becoming submissive to the feminine's change and accepting it completely. And that's the relationship I have. That's what I believe my relationship with God is mostly. It's this interfacing between me as masculine consciousness and the world, even my own body. When I look at myself in the mirror, I don't see a man, I see a woman, right? Not from a perspective of I identify as a woman, but I see my body as that change, as that feminine change. And in the same way that I would love my woman, when I look at her, what I would say at her, I try to do the same for myself, right? So easy to look at yourself in the mirror and, oh, he's fake. You're graining wrinkles. This is wrong.
Yes.
This is wrong. Would you speak that way to your feminine partner?
No, not if you loved her.
Exactly.
Absolutely not.
And
Yes.
that is my relationship with God.
Yes.
So,
So,
it's
so
like
it's almost like a relationship between chaos and order.
yeah, exactly.
You know, I don't know if you I don't know if you've heard of this before, but that's basically like the Garden of Eden.
Mm.
You know, the Garden of Eden is the place at which chaos and order merge.
I didn't know that. Actually.
Yes, with the creation story. That's why we can argue about the age of the earth for the longest time we want.
Mm.
But like there are things like the part of the fact that, for instance, when the Bible, when it speaks about earth, for the first time it speaks about earth being chaotic, formless and void. So it's this chaos. It's like God takes, so God order. He has a plan. He has all of these possibilities,
awareness.
everything, possibilities and everything. Okay, so it's almost like he takes chaos, so infinite possibility. He takes that, and when he speaks to it, it's his word. That's the part where Jesus comes in. And when he speaks to it, the order and the chaos come together and they form a garden.
Yeah.
They form a garden. So in
An
other words,
experience
it's a
that
thing like
arises.
yes, it's a thing like the ultimate environment for a human being to live in is in that garden, in the place where you have a balance between chaos and order.
Yeah.
You know, that's the ultimate place. But that's also what makes it really cool. The word that he spoke. So the word is considered to be Christ. He's the word of God. So who are we? Nou vergeet ek weer vereenselwig.
Associate.
We associate. Who are we associating ourselves with? We are associating ourselves with Christ. So, in other words, the mediator between order and chaos. So the one, that's who we are. the one bringing order and chaos together and creating a garden.
So
You know?
something you beautifully said is that the word is Jesus, right?
Yes.
So to like create some sense of association between what you believe and I believe that that narrative I have towards this divine feminine is me living in Christ's energy, right? If I
Okay.
live lovingly, if I can speak loving words at myself and at my environment, that is me living in that Christed energy, right? Instead of me creating a sense of dissonance, want for things to be differently. Like I do want to kind of like wrap it up a little
Okay,
bit. I want to read a
let's
few more
start
comments.
wrapping up. Maybe
Anyone
we should
feeling
just read all
enthused?
of the comments and then
Yeah, I think, and then
Okay.
we're gonna pull a card.
because it's also starting
Exactly.
to rain now.
It's like it's raining enough so that our body heat will probably evaporated, but
yes.
I'm gonna wrap it up. This is so lit. Thank you, friends, for joining us. Let's pull a card. I'll let Ruben choose when we actually pull the card. So this is another thing, right? These cards are called sacred geometry, Ruben.
I know sacred geometry.
Do you believe in sacred geometry? That's a
I-
loaded question.
It's a very loaded
It's
question.
just-
Maybe yes and no. I'm gonna say that.
Okay.
Okay. I'm not sure if we really have
So,
time to
what
really
I-
get into
What I
this
ask when I say
situation.
believe is sacred geometry is basically the when you look at the math of the universe and you try to visualize
Yes.
it, sacred geometry arises,
Yes.
right? So it's again this whole fractal of higher dimensional boiling down until we
Okay.
have this,
I
right?
that I agree with. Yes.
So we'll pull a card.
So almost in a way in which those patterns, the patterns of existence itself, kind of emerge. You
Yeah,
know?
exactly.
Okay,
And
I
then
do.
and then to see these cards as they're not the view, but they're trying to communicate some sort of view.
Okay.
So let's see. Let's see what card we'll pull today. I'll keep them nice and close to my heart, and then you tell me when to stop.
Okay. Stop.
Elemental embrace.
Elemental embrace.
You want to show our friends what card you pulled? We're not gonna have too much light right now.
Embrace.
Like maybe if you'd be willing
There
to
we are.
use your cell phone and just shine a little bit of light
No
on that.
problem.
I think it might be easier if we put on that light, but
I don't know if my flash is too bright though.
I think that's gonna work.
There we go.
It's almost like that sun.
It's so
like,
bright.
Yeah, it's almost like becoming extra bright. Weirdly enough, I really like the way that's turning out. Elemental embrace.
Okay.
Card number 52. So this is for you, dude. Feel what you feel about this. Elemental embrace is elemental forces and synthesis. It's a 7-star. This card speaks of connecting with elemental forces. Molten lava flows into oceans under a full moon, where two pairs of lovers inhabiting the stream plumes are revealed. They embody the passionate embrace of fire, creating earth and transmuting water into air. There is an atmosphere of raw, creative energy emerging from the planet's womb. You know how it feels, though you may have never experienced it. Coming from a primal place in our cellular memory, this feeling holds the power of the elements and speak directly to the relationship all humans have with the elements and with Mother Earth. So the understanding I was trying to share specifically, embedded within this card are two 7-sided stars. 7 is an integrating number, and here represents the synthesis of body, mind, and spirit with elemental forces. 7 indicates stages of transformation and is a self-contained chronicle for quickening creativity. How can you more fully appreciate your connection with elemental forces? You may decide to put your hands in the earth and grow a garden, water it, and see how sunlight and air combine to feed you and enhance growth and beauty in your life. You may sit by a fire with your feet on the ground, watching sparks fly into the air on a dark summer's eve. Perhaps you will learn to enhance your living space with a discipline such as feng shui. In any way you choose, find an understanding of the relationship among elemental forces so that you might live in harmony within your environment and merge your everyday life with the magic and mystery of the cosmos. I feel in a weird way that was perfectly synchronous with the conversations we were having today, man. Especially so, this, I feel like the core takeaways I got from this stream is one, how beautiful this infinite relationship is that we get to have with God, right? This relationship with the elements, if you will, right? That the ceaseless discovering. And then secondly, well, technically the most important point that I felt you made today is importance. How this ego and this experience of self arises, or at least allows for the rise of purpose and
Yes.
importance to be found. And I appreciate you sharing that, man. Thank you for
My friend,
joining
it
us.
was a wonderful time. I can't believe it's this late,
Yeah, 3 hours. Quick. Passed
but it
around.
was great.
Love you, friends. Thank you for joining me. Let me see if I'm missing some. Duck Dad, love you. Thank you, Toast, for joining us too. Jovan and Loizana, I missed you for a little bit. This has been an interesting listen. So as I go about my day. I won't weigh in with my opinions because I would never stop talking. We love you. We know, right? Like we were, like it was just me and him, and we could never stop talking.
Yes, absolutely.
Hope to see Ruben again. Great stream. Love you.
If he allows it, you will see me again.
Yeah, dude. I mean, you know where I live. That's where I live. Love you, friends. Thank you
Bye-bye.
for joining me again. Thank you, Ruben. I'll see you, friends, again soon. Love you. Thank you. Shannon is saying hi. Thank you for the conversation as well. I love you, friends. See you again soon.